Happy Hump Day, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show on a Wednesday. Our show today and every day is brought to you by our friends at Big Willie's, 1717 South Main Street. Lunch special is happening right now. Take your hour off, maybe take a client over there to Big Willie's, watch some U.S. Open tennis, and take in the delicious craft food menu. If your job allows it, and you're predisposed to a barley pop or an adult beverage, they've got those. Maybe you just want to shoot a little bit of pool. They have all your needs covered at 1717 South Main Street. Big Willie's, official title sponsor of the Sean O'Connell Show, and a great place if you don't have tickets to this weekend's Utah football game to gather with your fellow Utes and watch as they take on Cal Poly. Wednesdays this is the straddle, right? You're still looking back at what happened against UCLA. You're looking forward to what we think is going to happen against Cal Poly. And right now, the expectation for Utah, because of the offensive performance you saw from Devin Dampier, Jason Beck, offensive line, Rogers, Parker, Smith, Snowden, who, by the way, just got named the Paul Hornung Foundation Player of the Week. The Hornung Award goes to the most versatile football player in college football, and they do weekly awards. Smith Snowden, because he graded out well on defense and he was productive on offense in the run game and in the receiving game, scored a touchdown. He gets the week one weekly award from the Paul Hornung Foundation. So in the post-Travis Hunter world of college football, I think that we got so spoiled on knowing that there was a guy out there last year who was elite on both sides of the ball, who was an All-American caliber, at least all-conference caliber player by every metric on both sides of the ball. And you look at it, you're now wondering, well, Smith Snowden's not going to have the same workload. Landon Barton's not going to have the same workload. Jackson Benny's not going to have the same workload. Guys at other schools are like Caleb Downs is not getting a bunch of offensive snaps or return opportunities for Ohio State. The versatility thing, it's fun to watch a guy who's great on both sides of the ball or great on one side of the ball and is an excellent return specialist, the Charles Woodson kind of thing. And we saw it last year with Colorado, and it's just kind of given. It was taken for granted. And by the way, the Jacksonville Jaguars depth charts were released, and Travis Hunter is listed as a number 2 corner and a number 1 wide receiver. So starting on offense and a backup who is expected to also play on defense at the NFL level. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at that, OC, because we heard that that's the way Jacksonville had wanted to use him. But if we hadn't heard those kind of reports and this just happened, I would be surprised because he was almost universally claimed to be better on the defensive side of the ball. But I guess that's a reflection of how valuable offense is. I don't know.
See, for me, it might be a reflection of Jacksonville being kind of bad with personnel sometimes.
Yeah.
Because it's harder to find an elite corner than it is to find a really good wide receiver.
Yeah.
There are fewer lockdown corners in the NFL and at any level of football than there are good wide receivers. It is an easier position to play. Wide receiver is an easier position to excel at.
It's easier. It seems to be easier to develop into a superstar or at least one of the better wide receivers in the league from a guy. When a guy starts out, he's got good raw talent. It seems like that guy, we've seen more of those guys develop into great receivers than we have seen the guys who have raw talent at corner, but they don't develop into great corners as often, it seems like.
Corner is, in my opinion, quarterback gets its own evaluation. QBs are out on an island by themselves because the position is so different than everything else that you do in football. Yeah, it's the most important position in team sports. It's the most difficult position in team sports, whatever. you don't even get to compare it to the other football positions. And by the way, it's apples and oranges when you're comparing football positions to one another, because there are very few skills that translate from being like an offensive tackle to a safety. Like, yes, you're playing the same sport, but the positions are so different. In basketball, there's a lot of variation, but at some level, everyone in basketball is expected to be able to dribble if they have to, shoot if they have to, rebound if they have to, play defense if they have to, right? Like, you have to have kind of like a core skill set in basketball. Baseball, again, same thing. Pitchers are specialists and catchers are specialists, but everyone wants to be a five-tool player in baseball. You got to throw, hit, run. You got to be able to do it all, right?
It seems like the versatility is in style too, because you're 10, 15, 20 years ago and beyond that, if you were a guy who they're like, we'll play at third today, we'll play in outfield the next day, that was like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
that means I'm not very valuable.
If you had multiple positions, you didn't have one.
But now it's a little different.
But
anyway,
with QBs, right, they can be out in a different conversation by themselves. When you talk about the rest of the positions on a football field, cornerback is the most difficult one. And to have a Smith Snowden, who is being decorated now for versatility in, hey, this kid is really good at offense, and we already know he's a good defensive player as well, to have the better version of that, the more accomplished version of that, to have the Travis Hunter Heisman Trophy resume of a guy that was a lockdown corner. I mean, he was the number one recruit in high school because he was an elite defensive back. It wasn't because, hey, this kid can also play offense. Dion was the only coach, not the only coach, but he was the coach to be like, you know what? I can use this dude on both sides of the ball because he's just a man among boys, even at a top level of college football. And he didn't start at the top level, of course, but even at Jackson State, he was like, yeah, man, he's our best receiver and he's our best player. He's the best player type of guy. In the world of NFL football, if you have a best athlete on your team, if you have a best overall football player on your team, depending on how big that person is, again, quarterbacks, you're in a different world. I'm not talking about you. If you have, this guy is the best player, all right? He is the best athlete. He's the best player we can get. How big is he? Well, he's 6'6", over 300 pounds. Okay, then that best player is an offensive tackle. Okay, great. I have another best player. He's the best athlete we've got. How big is he? Well, he's between 5'11" and 6'2", and right around 200 pounds. Oh, can we make him 230? No. He's going to be around 200 pounds. Okay. He's really fast? Yeah. He's the best athlete you got? Yeah. He's a corner. That's the hardest position to play. You got to, like, it feels to me like, and I'm not being critical of Utah right now because we're all riding this wave. We're riding this high about what they did creativity-wise with the offense, and Smith Snowden is going to be an important part of that. Smith Snowden, as an offensive player, is special. Is Smith Snowden more special as an offensive player than he is as a defensive player? Maybe. Travis Hunter is not, in my mind, more special as an offensive player than he is as a defensive player. I think he's more special as a defensive player. And I think the greatest testament to that is that when you look at the numbers, he was like the number 3 corner in the country while he was also a starter on offense. If you had just made him a corner and throw in the return game for him, because that's a normal thing to do, I think that he's now a top 2 corner in the country in college football. And yes, there are some differences when you're talking about translating to the NFL, but not significant enough because he's not one of these guys who's like undersized. He's prototypical. He is long-limbed. He's got unbelievable football instinct. He's got ball skills that make him good enough to be an NFL wide receiver. It feels, in my mind, and I am not a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars staff for obvious reasons, but it feels like recognizing the talent that you have and recognizing the best place to use that talent is one of the things that separates good coaches from great coaches. Bill Belichick's unpopular right now, but at the NFL level, Bill Belichick is maybe the best to ever do it in recognizing where to put certain talents.
Especially on the defensive side.
How to maximize certain talents. And yes, on the defensive side, but you could make an argument too that like how many random-ass lacrosse players did he turn into really good wide receivers?
Remember Danny Woodhead? He ended up being like a very valuable player for the Chargers. Well, it started out because he was a no-name guy in the Patriots first.
Yeah, and by the way, Danny Woodhead won the D2 Heisman.
Yeah.
Right? He was a good player. He's just undersized. And there are some coaches that can't get out of their own way when it comes to like, well, no, that's not what it looks like. At the NFL level and the college football level is exactly like this. And this is something that as a Utah fan, you should be so happy is not a limiting factor for your coaching staff. All right?
Yeah,
because
they're good at this too.
They're not good at this. They are masters at this. They are excellent at this. And it's something I guess that can be taught because Urban Meyer knew it. Ron McBride knew it. So I'm assuming that like Mac kind of like passed it on to Witt, who kind of like shared it with Urban, or Urban shared it with him. And obviously that's been a core part of what Coach Witt does.
Clearly that's been taught to Morgan Scalley.
And by the way, we've recorded a conversation with Coach Beck for our Coordinator's Corner. I cannot wait to play this for people on Friday for our Coordinator's Corner, James, because he says something about the process of how Jackson Benny ended up taking offensive snaps that is so counterintuitive to everything that we have thought about the Utah coaching staff and the dynamics of how it works. So I'm not going to spoil it. I want it to come out of Coach's mouth, but remind me on Friday when we play it how important that is to this conversation we're having right now. But like the talent recognition thing, and it's not just talent that they're recognizing. It's skill set recognition. It's extrapolating something that someone is good at into another spot that not every coach can do. There are thousands of coaches in the college and NFL world that are excellent at doing things in this box, right? They're so good at it. Like some people make their money and win their accolades by being the best at the traditional path, right? Utah is not the place, I don't think, where you can just be the best at the traditional path and expect to have elite success. And the reason that Kyle Whittingham has been able to achieve elite success, even at a place like the University of Utah, is because he's willing and able, and more than able, but he's excellent at coloring outside the lines just a little bit. And we
willing
never give
to
him
experiment too and be wrong. Like that's it. That is the risk involved in doing what they have developed, what Kyle Whittingham and his staff have developed into a great skill at the Power 4 level is enormous. And yet, like that, they have the courage to be like, yeah, this guy who was a receiver, we're going to put him on the defensive side here. This guy who was a quarterback in high school, we're going to make him a linebacker. He didn't play much linebacker, and we're willing to be wrong about this and then pick up the pieces and figure out something else. They just haven't been wrong very often, but it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Well, the wide receivers to defensive ends transition is not a super typical thing that you see. There's been plenty of guys that are offensive linemen who move to defensive line. There's been more guys who get recruited as defensive linemen, and it's just like, actually, your pad level's wrong to be a defensive lineman. Let's move you over to the offensive line. I mean, every team does this, right? I'm not pretending that Utah's unique, but there's so many examples of this team specifically and this program over the last 20 years being able to recognize, like, first of all, some limitations. Hey, I don't have what I need at this particular spot, but maybe there's someone on this roster that we're using elsewhere that can fill this need. And there's also a willingness to do what Belichick was really good at in the NFL and maybe set a good example of, where you're just like, gosh, I just need 6 plays a game where this guy does this for me. I need 10 plays a game where I create a matchup problem on the other side of the ball, and you can go back further than Belichick, obviously, but he's a great example of it. It wasn't a gimmick when the 85 Bears lined up Refrigerator Perry to be a lead blocker.
Yeah.
Like, because, and we've seen this with Vita Vea now in the NFL, where it's just like, gosh, who's the kid who played? Oh man, I'm blanking on his name. There's a guy who played for the Niners and the Seahawks, and he's an East High kid, and he's a D lineman that used to play fullback for both the Niners and the Seahawks. Oh, it's going to drive me insane. Hair coming out the back, Polynesian guy, 877-353-0700 if you know who I'm talking about. But in any case, we're on a tangent right now, unplanned, by the way, about the fact that, Smith Snowden has been recognized.
Tuka Afu?
Yes, Will Tuka
Afu? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, James, for looking that up.
Hey, yeah. I don't remember that, but Google does. So shout out to Google.
Like, it's this willingness, like you said, to take a risk. And by the way, for Utah football, it's a massive risk to be like, all right, one of our best in a year where there are people with questions about our defensive backfield, and specifically how the corners are going to split their positional reps, right? Looks like Cotton has kind of emerged as the opposite starter to Scooby Davis. But your slot corner position is, as Kyle Whittingham has told us many, many times, the most difficult. It's the heaviest workload. You're expected to do more in run support because you're closer to the box. You're supposed to be the fast guy that can get in and around blocks. And you're taking that guy, the guy who you know is really good at that, Smith Snowden, and you're saying, here's a dozen or more snaps on offense. Here's a bunch of touches. Here's a touchdown for you. Here's a few passes thrown your way. Oh, and by the way, we're going to run some jet sweeps. You're going to motion in, and we're going to hand you the ball. That's a risk. From a does this work out standpoint, from a fatigue standpoint, or I barely even like to mention it. In fact, I'm not going to, but you know what other standpoint the risk is at or comes from, right? And then the wildest thing about it in week one, your counter arguments are like, well, it's not as risky because now you have a second player. You have this Jackson Benny kid who has emerged as a reliable slot corner as well. He's got versatility. He's got speed. He can do it if Smith Snowden can't do it. Smith Snowden's too tired or too dinged up or whatever. Guess what? That guy is also getting offensive snaps. So there's risk. But the reward feels like, at least in a one-game sample size, it's enough.
And I think it's important to point out, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe with offensive coordinators not named Andy Ludwig, they were doing this. But for me, this is the first time since I've been following Utah football closely, OC, that we've seen this on the offensive side, a coach recognize this kind of positional versatility. It feels like, for me, it's mostly been Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley and the defensive coaches saying, hey, I see this guy who might be playing offense, Connor O'Toole, who's playing offense right now. I see him as a defensive end. Let's make that switch, or whatever. Plenty of other examples. It feels like Jason Beck might be one of the first to say, hey, I see this defensive guy as a guy who can really contribute to my offense, which is a game changer for Utah if it continues to work out like it did against UCLA. I think.
Yeah, it's a lot more common, and we used to joke about it, right? Where you knew that Kyle Whittingham was like, yeah, come and play quarterback for us. Wink. It's like, wait, Coach, why'd you wink?
Chase Hansen, yeah, we're going to pick you up at the airport. You're going to be our quarterback.
Hey, we really like your ability as a quarterback. Thanks, Coach. Wink. Wait, why'd you wink? What do you mean? I didn't wink. You winked.
I have a tick. That's all.
You winked. Right. Was that wink to indicate that maybe? No. You're a great quarterback. Hey, man, we want you to be a quarterback. Wink. Hey, he winked again. Like, we joked about this all the time, that it was always like, oh, okay, here's the supreme athlete at the University of Utah. he's going to end up on the defensive side of the ball. They're going to favor that side of the ball so aggressively that the best players, going back to the Travis Hunter thing, the best players are going to be moved to the defensive side of the ball. And your argument might be right that the Jacksonville Jaguars might just be like, we have a unicorn athlete. When you have a unicorn athlete, you put him in the spot that gives you the most value. The spot that gives us the most value is offense because the NFL is an offensive league right now. If he's not playing quarterback, then we want the unicorn to be on the offensive side of the ball. Well, we've seen it over, again, the sample size for Utah, where we have this luxury where it's 21 years long. And actually, when you go back to Coach Witt as a coordinator and as a position coach, longer than that. So more examples have been out there of versatile players or elite players going over to the defense, but there's history. Like Sam Tevi is probably the best example. Sam Tevi started his career as a defensive lineman at the University of Utah. And Sam Tevi just was like not as natural a mover at D-line as probably they needed him to live up to the defensive line standard at the University of Utah. And when I say not as natural of a mover, I'm not saying he's not a great athlete, because he is. That's why he was able to have a successful offensive line career in the NFL and be an all-conference level guy for the Utes. It was more just like there's a natural predilection to being in a 4-point stance or bending in a certain way or playing with a lower pad level that you have to have. Sometimes it's a build thing. And Sam was a very long-armed, kind of long-limbed guy, maybe taller than some offensive or some defensive linemen need to be. And, of course, there's like the Chris Joneses of the world that are a freak anomaly where he somehow is tall and long and lean and still a great interior defensive lineman. Usually they're not. They're usually a little bit more compact. But Tevi's a great example of when the offensive staff and the defensive staff at the University of Utah were just like, man, this kid's really good as a football player, but maybe we have him in the wrong spot. And, by the way, his future is perhaps better served if we move him to offensive line. And the proof's in the pudding there.
Yeah.
I could look up what Sam Tevi's career earnings are as an offensive lineman, but I promise you that he wouldn't have done the same thing if he had stayed a defensive line. This is an interesting point coming in also from 6754. Being able to pitch potentially playing two ways is a great recruiting pitch as well. It's not the lead reason, but it's an extra arrow in your quiver, and you know what? You're damn right. Because winning the recruiting battle now, where so much of it kind of comes down to, well, how much money can you give me? Utah's probably not going to be the team that gets to throw out the biggest number in most cases. Now, if you have a wonderful year and you win a Big 12 championship and there's an influx of donor cash, certainly that helps. But when we're talking about a 10-year plan, a sustainability project, there's just always going to be bigger buyers out there. There's going to be heavier hitters financially out there. So is there a way that you can catch up to that, or that you can counterpoint that? I mean, money talks, and it's always going to talk. But if you can say, hey, you're the best player on your high school team, you're a running back and linebacker, you're a safety and running back, you're a corner/wide receiver, you have a huge impact on the game. Do you want to have that huge impact on the game in college football? Come play with me. Come play for us. Oh, you don't do that. Yeah, we do. Look at Smith Snowden. Look at Lander Barton. This kid, Jackson Benny, started as a walk-on in the program, and now he's played his way into a situation where we're just like, you can help us on both sides? Let's go. So, yeah, I mean, there's a recruiting point to it as well. I don't know how much of an advantage it can give you, but there's a recruiting bonus to it. I like the term arrow in the quiver.
Yeah, I like that too. The other, going back to what I said, I just feel like it can be quite a game changer for us to see it consistently on the offensive side like we've seen on the defensive side. And it certainly looked like You could certainly see that potential with the way they played against UCLA, but let's be honest, UCLA looks like a really awful football team after one game. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see how it goes against Texas Tech in a couple weeks. And that'll be one of the first true tests of how effective this can be. Particularly, is this going to take away from Smith and Lander and Jackson's effectiveness on the defensive side at all? It didn't against UCLA. We'll see. We'll see once they get into conference play.
All right, got to take a break. Bill Connolly, ESPN college football writer, is going to join us on the other side. His reaction to what Utah has done so far. Again, very small sample size, only week one. The outlook on the Big 12. And we're going to talk to him about his new book, Forward Progress, the definitive guide to the future of college football. And that, I mean, the possibilities are not all great, but they are endless. It's out now. We'll talk to Bill Connolly about his new book and the landscape of the game we all love. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, brought to you by Big Willie's Sports Bar, 1717 South Main. Stick with us on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in Bill Connolly, ESPN college football writer. He's got a new book out, Forward Progress, The Definitive Guide to the Future of College Football. Came out yesterday. Bill, welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. How are you, sir?
I'm pretty good. How about you?
Doing all right. Tell me why you decided to tackle a project like theorizing on the future of a game that changes about every 3 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing is, for 50, 60 years, all these things we were arguing about, nothing really changed, and all of a sudden it all changed. And I started to realize, I like having a vision of where the sport should be going, and it was just really hard to do that when you had so much you're just reacting to, and the ground was kind of shifting underneath you a little bit. So I figured a book would be a good way to kind of step back and look at all the different factors, all the different changes that have been going on, because I think some of them are very good, and then others are pretty dangerous, and, just basically strip them apart. Like, look at the history of conference realignment, look at history of arguing about a playoff and paying players, and why the heck isn't anybody in charge of this sport, and all these different things, and try to piece together how we got to this point and what it might tell us about where we're going. Okay,
so you just asked one of the most important questions. Why isn't anybody in charge? How did we get to the spot where it is a wild, wild west? I think I know, and I've been spouting on my show for years, telling people this is how we got here, but you've actually done the research. So how did we get to this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty mind-blowing when you step back and think about it. But, I mean, yeah, we basically had, two things. Number one, the NCAA was basically enforced or created 100-something years ago as just kind of a way to discuss rules changes and whatnot and kind of oversee that part of the sport. But they got enforcement power when they got the TV contract in the early 50s, and they threatened to, remove schools from that, and it got everybody scared and put them all in line for, 30-something years, basically. But when the NCAA versus Board of Regents, the famous case from the 80s, basically said the NCAA couldn't control the TV contract anymore, from that immediate point, it became a free-for-all. It became all, everyone for themselves, and jockeying for position and all these things. And that's how each wave of conference realignment was based on who could get the most television money. And that's basically how the sport's been run. We don't have anyone in charge, but we kind of do. It's just whoever is the senior, most powerful conference commissioner, but he works on behalf of his conference and his schools, and everybody else does too in their own way, and it just becomes it's created a lot of the consolidation that we're now dealing with in the sport.
We have talked on this show with Utah and BYU's kind of unique position in the overall landscape of college football about this looming eventuality of an AFC NFC model of a super conference future of whether it's going to be 40 teams or 64 teams or whatever. And look, I lean on it. It's probably lazy. I lean on it the same way everyone else does. That that's the direction we are headed. Is that actually the direction we are headed?
Well, I think one of the things we learn, when we kind of step back, looking at conference realignment and all the things that have happened so far, the future is never exactly what we think it's going to be. We never got those 4 perfectly even, balanced 16-team super conference like we thought. We got like a super mutated version of that, and that tends to be how things go. So one of the things I wanted to, step back and think about was, first of all, do the SEC and Big Ten have any reason, any motivation to do anything differently than what they're already doing? And right now they don't. We kind of live in the Super League simulation already. It's just that they let the Big 12 have a spot in the playoff, and the ACC and the G5. They've arranged to make all the money from the playoff, but they'll let a couple of other teams in just to keep everybody happy. And this is not a healthy way, but at the same time, I don't know if that means they'll ever feel the need to move to a Super League model, because they're already getting like 95% of what they want. So that's not really encouraging necessarily, but it at least kind of prevents maybe the ultimate doom scenario here.
Does the future of college football ever include Notre Dame in a conference? I grew up on Notre Dame football, and people close to the program, or depending on who you talk to, will be like, there's no need, it'll never happen. They've got kind of like their pseudo allegiances to the ACC, and They're a geographical fit with the Big Ten. Is Notre Dame ever in a football conference?
Well, I do think it could be interesting here in a few years if the ACC does crumble a little further and kind of takes away the comfort of that arrangement. And then also, the US, we know USC is talking about, canceling the USC Notre Dame game, which is absurd. Well, first of all, be a playoff level team first before you worry about what it's going to do to your playoff, stakes or whatever. But no, I mean, if those things happen, you could see Notre Dame getting nervous if they're cut off from USC and the ACC doesn't seem like as good a deal. But for right now, I mean, it doesn't in the current arrangement. And if this is the arrangement we have moving forward, if we end up with a playoff, especially if we don't get those stupid auto bids and we end up with just like a 16-team playoff with 11 at-larges and 5 auto, conference title bids, I think the odds still favor them remaining independent. I just, there are certain factors at play here that could change that.
Bill Connolly is our guest on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN writer. His third book, Forward Progress, The Definitive Guide to the Future of College Football, is available now. It was released yesterday. Check it out. Another question I have about this theoretical future in college football is whether or not once you have a place at the table, and I'm talking about the table with all that money that you're referencing where the Big Ten and the SEC and Notre Dame sit, do you always have a place at that table? Because we watched Oregon State and Washington State be like the people in the game of musical chairs that couldn't find a place to sit, and I thought that would never happen. Yeah, the Pac-12 is what it was, but it felt like pernicious to just be like, yeah, you guys, Washington State and Oregon State, you're the ones who don't have a safe landing spot, and it made no sense to me. But if you're Rutgers, if you're Maryland, if you're Vanderbilt, is that a possibility for your future?
Yeah, that's along with the Super League vision. That is something that a lot of people will talk about. Is at some point Alabama will decide, why are we sharing this money with you, Mississippi State, and everybody will turn on each other. And I my line in the book is just like, yes, this is why I watch college sports, for the financial leverage. But that's kind of. I hope it doesn't come to that. That's something we're all kind of just guessing about and assuming, but we haven't ever heard Alabama say we're unhappy making the same amount of media revenue as Mississippi State. Among other things, the media rights are only part of it. The richest schools are the richest because they have the most. They raise the most money to begin with, and they sell the most tickets and all these other things. So it isn't necessary. Ohio State's going to have the most money regardless, and at some point, somebody just has to tap the brakes and say, we have enough money. You have enough money. It doesn't matter that you could make a little bit more at the expense of Indiana or whatever. I guess that's a bad example now because they made the playoff at Purdue. And at any moment we could actually kind of change course in this regard. But if it just becomes one of those things where we all assume it's going to happen and then Ohio State says, actually, yeah, that is a good idea, isn't it? Then that's where we go. It's just – there's no need for it, and I hope that there's a voice of reason between now and then.
I think I have to remind myself sometimes, and I probably remind my listeners too often for their liking, how Utah football is kind of the center of our universe this time of year in Salt Lake City, but it's far from the center of the college football universe. A respected program, certainly, but not by any stretch of the imagination a blue blood brand or anything like that. Does Utah have a secure place in the eventual future of big-time college football in your mind?
I think, yeah. I mean, obviously, if we're talking about a 32-team Super League situation, then probably not. But I still don't think that's the most likely scenario here. I mean, I know there are a lot of people who believe this, which is basically the greatest thing college football has going for it is that there are millions of centers of universes out there. Like there are so many different universes, so many different areas of the country that care deeply about college football. One of Utah's conference mates now, one of the examples I use in one of the book chapters is like Iowa State draws 57,000. They've never won anything. They have 2 top 15 finishes ever. All their asking to be is just kind of at the party. Let them be part of the dance, and they're going to pack their stadium and have a lot of fun. And we seem to be inching towards a world where we just straight up tell the Iowa States or maybe Utah's, yeah, you don't matter here. So just, find something else to do with your time. And that seems like the single worst thing we could do if we're actually worried about the health of college football.
BYU is really interesting. Obviously, our rival here on the home of the Utes, but I'm wrong about a lot of predictions. I was correct when I said when NIL is a thing, BYU is one of the programs, one of the athletic departments that's going to experience some serious upward mobility because I know how insanely loyal the fan base is. I know there's a lot of money in the fan base.
Right.
And, they've changed their stars probably more than any other program in football, certainly, and in college basketball even more so.
Yeah.
When it comes to using now legal avenues to pay players to come to your school, has anyone else done as much as BYU has to change their status in college athletics in the current model and I guess in the emerging future?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Big 12 is the interesting conference in that regard because you have BYU and then you also have Texas Tech. I think that's like the most high visibility one. In one off season, they bought the best player in college softball and almost won the national title. Now they've done more of that. They've obviously spent big on their transfer class for football. They had a lot of ground to make up, so I can't decide where I think they are in the Big 12 hierarchy this year. Part of what I love about the Big 12 is there is no hierarchy. All 16 teams have a chance, but they've certainly kind of been very visible in the ways that they've tried to upend the system, and it'll be really interesting. I mean, if especially Texas Tech, because they were so visible about it and they have the oil money and all that, if they really do make a charge this year, they win the Big 12, they win a couple playoff games, just openly using the NIL, the black box of collectives and obviously the legal money. I am really curious what the response from powers will be about that. Probably won't be good. Usually, they'll just lock down more power for themselves. Is how it typically goes. But yeah, Big 12 isn't really being quiet here about its willingness to figure out money streams and figure out ways to keep up. And I'm curious where that takes them.
There's the college football soap opera right now with Mike Gundy saying some things that Dan Lanning didn't like, and Oregon is obviously one of these big money teams. They've got the Nike connection, and Mike Gundy trying to paint a picture for us that just poor little Oklahoma State. There's never been a man named Boone Pickens, which is like a convenient thing to ignore.
Yeah.
But it begs the question, and this question gets brought up in multiple different ways, multiple different times a year, of whether or not you can buy championships, whether or not you can win championships without paying for them in the way that you now have to pay for them that Ohio State allegedly did last year. So as we talk about this big picture stuff, when you've done your research, what can you tell me about that? Can you win a national championship if you've got a $10 million roster instead of a $30 million roster?
Right. Yeah, I mean, basically, it's like European soccer or kind of baseball now, where money doesn't guarantee success, but it basically buys you more margin for error. Like a $10 million roster, if your quarterback is awesome and stays healthy the whole year, if you have just the right complements and you're kind of up to date on your tactics and everything, then sure, you could absolutely win a ton of games. But you're just gonna, like, the injury bug cannot bite, and that's the thing is we saw last year with Georgia or Notre Dame, the injury bug bit a lot, and they were still really, really good. Georgia still won the SEC. Notre Dame, all their linemen got hurt at one point or another, but the next guy was just as good, and that's what the money buys is depth. Maybe quarterback play too, but I even think with a quarterback play in the right system, you can kind of get around that a little bit. You just can't. Wear and tear usually takes down the thinner teams, and that's where really, especially now that you might have to win 4 playoff games, that's really where the rubber meets the road there, and it'll be pretty difficult for the lesser teams to keep up.
Bill, is Alabama going to stay a blue blood? I love Kalen DeBoer, but it's not off to a great start so far with him. And there was a time not so long ago when Alabama wasn't Alabama. The pre-Nick Saban thing, people conveniently forget. I mean, in Salt Lake City we don't, because Utah beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. But there was a time when Alabama isn't what we think of as Alabama now. Are they headed back that direction? Is it possible for that to happen?
Yeah, I mean, basically, Alabama is Tennessee when you think about it, just in terms of, how hard it is to get all the arrows pointed in the right direction among boosters and influences, everything. And when they're pointed in the right direction, you can do big things. If you happen to hire the greatest coach in the history of college football, he's going to get all those arrows pointed in the right direction. But yeah, Alabama's like so many other programs when it just comes to once things go awry a little bit, it becomes a circular firing squad, and everything, all the arrows turn on each other, and you end up making dumb hires or dumb firings and big buyouts and all these things that can lead you down a really bad road for a while. So yeah, they're kind of in. They're wobbling right now. This is still a talented team. They could turn around and make the playoff and win a couple games, and everything will be mostly fine. But this is what happens when you succeed a legend. Kalen DeBoer had never been bad. He had been good at every single job he's ever had in football. And then he goes to succeed Nick Saban, and in whatever this is, his 14th game, the world is falling apart around him. And that's just kind of how this goes, I think.
It didn't take 14 games for things to look bad for Bill Belichick. So what is that going to look like as the season progresses in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think we already knew this, but this has been reinforced now. Like, even if you're Bill Belichick, if you're buying an entirely new offensive line, an entirely new defensive line on a budget where you got to, maybe it was a decent budget that they had, but they had to bring in so many new guys. That's just not going to be a good team. I mean, that was what it came down to, was once TCU understood what North Carolina was going to try to do on Monday, and TCU is a very talented team, but not top 5 good, just like top 20, 25 good. Once they knew the tactics, the lines blew. The TCU lines blew up the North Carolina lines, and that was it. So I think that's what we've learned. How this is going to go for North Carolina this year. Maybe they get some good. They get the tactics just right. Guys start to develop and all that, but their lines stink, and it's really hard to. When that's the case in game one, it tends to be the case for quite a while.
Bill, I could pick your brain all day, but we're up against the break, so we'll let you go. If our listeners want to check out Forward Progress, the definitive guide to the future of college football, which is out now, what is the best way to maximize the Bill Connolly dollars in purchasing that book?
Well, it sure seems like rigging the Amazon algorithm in your favor is probably the best long-term goal here. So if anybody just wants to hop on Amazon and get it, that's good. I always love, you want to hop on social and show me that you're buying it in an actual physical bookstore. That'd be pretty phenomenal. But sounds like, if you just want to do the old Amazon route, that'll be just fine.
That's Bill Connolly, ESPN college football writer, and his new book is out now. Go check out Forward Progress. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Great stuff from Bill Connolly. If you're not familiar with his work, he was the inventor and proprietor of the S&P Plus. He is a very data-driven guy, and I'm actually very curious to read the definitive guide to the future of college football, because anytime you're talking about the definitive guide to a future, it has to be a little tongue-in-cheek. We don't know, but Bill probably knows a little better than we do because of all of his research. All right, you know what? We have a short segment coming, and I'm just going to take advantage of this short segment to get you overly excited about a number. There's a Ute. The performance against UCLA put one of Utah's players at the top of the national statistics in this particular category, and it is an important category in college football. I'll tell you who it is and what the number is next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, it's that time of year again, folks. The Greek Festival is coming back to Salt Lake City at the Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Cathedral, September 5th through the 7th. They'll have the classic Greek food, entertainment, much, much more at Greek Fest. Don't miss it. Tickets are available at saltlakecitygreekfestival.com. We gave 4 away yesterday. Is that happening again today?
We did. We have a 4-pack every day this week.
Oh, ho, ho!
Yeah. Get some of that Greek food. As Spence's favorite baklava shakes are probably abundant at the Greek Festival.
Guess what I had yesterday?
Oh, what'd you have? A baklava shake?
I had a gyro, and I had a baklava shake
Wow.
yesterday.
What a Greek day for you.
It was fantastic. I got home. My lovely wife was like, look what we got for you.
Oh,
It was fantastic.
that's awesome.
Yeah. And my children know of my obsession with the baklava shake, and they were aggressively trying to steal it from me. Now, most times I will happily share with my children,
Yeah.
but you got to draw the line somewhere. So there's 2 things. My mom's molasses cookies, all right, and these baklava shakes where I'm
No
like,
sharing.
get away from me, you little raccoons. I aggressively knock them to the ground. Don't touch my baklava shake.
Like, hey, did you know I'm a champion MMA fighter? You don't want to touch my shake.
They have no respect for that. It was before they were all born, so they're just like, Dad,
that didn't exist.
Dad, why is your belly so big? I'm like, dang it.
Speaking
Because of the
of
baklava shakes.
this is huge tangent, but you said before they were born, so it reminded me. So last night, so Netflix has The Land Before Time.
Oh,
on it,
yeah.
the original The Land
Yeah.
Before Time, and those were my favorite movies growing up
Okay.
in elementary
Those
school. I
being
should say
all 7 of the
Well,
Land Before Time.
there's a lot more. They've made a lot more than that, believe it or not. But the first 7, yes, were like my favorite movies. Growing up, I got it. It was a birthday tradition. I got the new Land Before Time every year, so I was a huge Land Before Time fan. So it was fun going back. And then I made the joke watching it with my wife and the newborn kid,
Okay.
and introducing it to him for the first time. And I'm like, this is The Land Before Time. It came out in 1988. That's before we were born, so that was before time, right?
I don't like that joke.
Ayo. Oh, you were born before 88?
I was 5 years old in 1988. By the way, James, you're absolutely correct. Take a wild guess at how many Land Before Time films there actually are.
Was there 25 by now?
There are, according to Google, there are 14.
Oh, 14, okay. I
That
thought they just kept making them every year after I stopped watching
Well,
them. It seemed
Google-
like they did.
Google has been pretty unreliable as of late, so
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure
Maybe there's more. I think
The most recent one, Land Before Time 14, was released in 2016.
okay. I think Amazon Prime, you can like rent or buy all of them, and then like the first one is the only one that's included with Prime, I think, or at least that's as of a few months ago. Because after we had the kid, I may or may not have been like, how many of these are available included with Prime? And at that time it was just one, and I'm like, babe, we're buying these, right? On Prime,
right.
so that he can watch these, right?
I got a big problem right now. You know how many different actors have voiced Littlefoot?
Oh, I have no idea.
13!
Okay, that's like a different one per movie, basically? Jeez.
Basically.
I didn't catch that as an elementary school kid.
I
watching
don't.
the new ones. Or at that time, the new ones.
Sarah, the cantankerous triceratops, who never actually develops the brow horns that would make her a triceratops.
Yeah. Sarah with the C, of course.
Yes. Sarah, only two actresses have voiced Sarah.
You were a Land Before Time fan, too.
Yeah.
Right?
Obviously. Dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Love
See,
Land
that's
Before Time.
that we disagree on a lot of things, but when it comes to dinosaurs, we're on the same page.
I have good taste. You have bad taste, except when it comes to dinosaurs. In any case, I want to deliver on the tease I gave before.
Yeah, my bad. Way
somehow-
too big a tangent
We
there.
somehow got from
Shout out
Greek,
to Land Before Time.
Greek festival to baklava shakes to Land Before Time, and now we circle back to this important stat. There's a Utah football player who right now leads the nation in one important college football stat, and it is quarterback pressures. According to Pro Football Focus College, John Henry Daly is number 1 in the country right now in QB pressures. 7 QB pressures for JHD against UCLA. 2 sacks and got close. If they were playing against a quarterback not named Nico Iamaleava, I think that he probably would have had a 3 or 4 sack day. And Carson Calfusi would have had probably 1.5 instead of a half sack. And Logan Fano probably would have had another sack as well. I mean, the pass rush was getting pressure and getting home, and just Nico's a hard guy
elusive,
to bring down.
Yeah, he's not as elusive as Devin Dampier, but he's elusive.
By the way, our resident BYU fan who loves us and listens to us, and we appreciate.
We love our Cougar fan listeners.
At 09 listener. We got
I
one.
guess maybe we just have the one.
We probably just have the one.
We only have the one who texts in.
I'm not going to assume that we have more than that. We just have the one. This is the resident BYU fan again, fellas. I was listening to one of the ESPN national shows about 9 o'clock our time last night, and the number 1 dark horse candidate after week 1 for the Heisman is none other than Devin Dampier. So,
not Bear Bachmeier. Interesting.
And the Centaur himself. All right, so our resident BYU fan, who, by the way, yesterday was also talking about his concern for the game down in Provo based on what was seen against UCLA. Like, oh, yikes.
See, we love our resident BYU fan. We love all our listeners. We love our resident BYU fan because he has respect for scouting the opponent. And he gets lots of great insights from listening to the Home of the Utes to where he's able to go. And watching the games, of course, where he's able to have an intelligent response like that. Like, hey, this is concerning for me as a BYU fan. We love that.
So John Henry Daly, former BYU Cougar, to connect it with our resident BYU fan. John Henry Daly, the transfer, now getting his first real time at the University of Utah, his first real game as a starter. 7 quarterback pressures and 2 sacks. Hell yeah.
Let's go.
Sack Lake City, baby. Woo!
By the way, named after 2 great Johns, John Henry, the mythical
steel driver man,
and John Daly, the great golfer.
All
in one.
Have we confirmed that with the Daly family?
You mean his dad, John Daly, the golfer? No, we're just making stuff up now.
All right, Trevor Riley is set to join us in studio. When you talk about wild men who are good at getting after the passer, that's another one. The Utah football legend joins us next for some Big 12 at noon, brought to you by Mountainland Supply. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Utah head volleyball coach Beth Lanier is going to join us in 25 minutes. Looking forward to that conversation. As Utah volleyball's got some big things coming in their Big 12 season. College volleyball shaping up, of course, the same way that the football season is. It's just getting started. Already some big upsets. Penn State got upset this past weekend. Number 2 team in the country. We're efforting Trevor Riley. As you all know, the Rattlesnake, he's a bit of a wild man, and he's got some serious duties for his Utah Islanders GM position. So there might be a conflict here and there. Yeah, it was TCU, actually, on Monday that upset the highly ranked Nittany Lions, who maybe got a little bit too much love in the old preseason. Big 12, for those who are interested in the conference allegiances here, has now handed the Nittany Lions 2 losses, Arizona State and TCU, able to get that done. All right, so we'll keep trying Trevor Riley. Big 12 at noon conversation is brought to you by Mountain Land Supply. This is one of those things, I actually should ask Bill Connolly about this, but, I'm bad at the job, so I didn't. I don't know if you're aware that the behind-the-scenes conversations in college football, they go all year long. We bring them to the front of the scenes when there's no football to discuss for obvious reasons. When there's football to discuss, it's more interesting to talk about John Henry Daly's pressure rate and Logan Fano finishing sacks than it is to talk about class action lawsuits that are being presented to the NCAA regarding eligibility rules. But that's what's happening right now. And like all of the other dominoes that are stacked by the NCAA, this one appears like it will fall sooner than later. There's currently a class action suit against the NCAA regarding eligibility. 5 years to play 5 is what student athletes are looking for. Right now, most of you know this, probably all of you know this. College athletes are afforded 5 years of eligibility in order to play 4 years. And in recent years, that 5 years has remained the same, and the 4 years of eligibility has now been 4 years and 4 games of eligibility, because you can play in up to 4 games and still preserve your red shirt. So Vanderbilt, Langston Patterson is their best linebacker. He is now leading a class of student athletes filing suit against the NCAA over redshirt rules. The lawsuit was filed on Tuesday, and what they want is for the NCAA to allow 5 years of eligibility in your 5 years you actually get to play. Right now you've got 5 years to play 4. We've seen how this plays out. Occasionally you get we're right now rounding to the end of the guys getting 7 and 8 years of eligibility because of the COVID year not counting against people's clearinghouse. There's no challenge at this moment to the 5 years of eligibility. They're like, yeah, 5 years is plenty of time. Be able to get a degree. But this class of student athletes wants those 5 years to be full participation years with no penalty to your team, no penalty to you as an individual, no such thing as a required red shirt if you're going to be in school for 5 years. Now, we know that for a lot of the elite players in college football, they have 5 years of eligibility, but they use 3. We also know that for decades, it didn't make a ton of sense for people to continue playing college football for more than 4 years because, it's time to move on with your life. But guess what's happening now? Now, for a lot of student athletes, and I mean a lot of student athletes, the highest paying job they are ever going to have in their life is the job of playing college sports. That wasn't usually the case unless you were, with one of the bagmen type programs. If you were getting a duffel bag full of Benjamins dropped off at your off-campus apartment like Lendale White or Ray Lewis back in the day. Warren Sapp was apparently the guy at Miami that really kind of handled it for everyone. We all know that there have been programs for years and years and years. I mean, going back, I bet a century that had impermissible benefits going on. But now it's ubiquitous. It is everywhere that college athletes, if you're good, and I don't mean superstar level. I mean, if you're good, you're making some money. Revenue sharing is now a thing, okay? So even if you have the dullest, most ridiculously flat personality, if you're physically hideous and there's just no appeal for any brand,
no marketing.
There's just like you're a blank wall of personality and you're just kind of ugly. There's no reason for anyone to be like, let's give that kid an endorsement deal. You're a starter. You grade out at exactly C+ every game. You're too good to replace for your team, but you're not a star in any. Like, you still get money now.
And people know who you are.
You still get money.
Yeah.
Because you're a starter. Excuse me. My impassioned description of ugly players just got me a little bit out of sorts with the cough there. Sorry.
By the way, should I update our listeners with Trevor? He's going to be in studio. He's en route.
Okay.
So we'll see how much time we get. Maybe we can, since he'll be here, maybe we can do a few minutes, then talk to Beth, then a few minutes with him after Beth. I don't know. We'll Frankenstein something together.
We could probably figure it out with Trevor.
Yeah.
We appreciate him, fitting us into his schedule. But so this class action suit is interesting from the standpoint of, all right, now you want 5 years to play 5, and it makes sense that players would want an extra bite at the apple on a college football roster. And it's actually perfect that it's a Vanderbilt linebacker that is leading the class because, you're getting some money. You're not getting crazy money. And if you're a Vanderbilt linebacker, I mean, this guy, Langston Patterson, perhaps has an NFL future. But most guys at a place like Vanderbilt don't, right? I mean, it's not fair to do that just to Vanderbilt. Most guys on every roster in the country don't have an NFL future. It's actually incredibly rare that people have NFL futures. But now it's a real vehicle to success for your life. It always was in a more abstract sense, but there's a very concrete reason now to want to maximize everything you can in college football because revenue sharing is a reality, and it's always going to favor the richest teams and the best players, always. But even if you're just a player, even if you're just there, even if you're just part of it, you now have a more realistic path to financial success than ever before. The more interesting thing about this for me is that it is another lawsuit against the NCAA, against restrictions that have been in place for the longest time in the NCAA. This domino, like I said, is eventually going to fall. And student athletes are going to be afforded 5 years to play 5. 5 years, 5 seasons of eligibility over a 5-year period. And then guess what happens next, ladies and gentlemen? When you knock this wall down, the next wall that gets knocked down is, well, why only 5 years? If I'm the Van Wilder of college football and there's no real path for me to move forward and play pro sports, I don't have an NFL future. I'm not going to make the whatever $1 million on an NFL roster minimum. I'm not going to make the $400,000-ish to be on a practice squad even. You know what I could do? Is I could stay and I could play linebacker for Vanderbilt for 7 or 8 years. And I can get the $50,000, $100,000, $200K that comes with that for 7 or 8 years. So that's why this is interesting to me. Because Langston Patterson and the class of athletes filing suit against the NCAA don't want redshirt rules to apply the way they do. They want 5 years to play in your 5 years of eligibility. And that's not going to change a lot in college football. But what is going to change something is when the guy gets his draft grade after that 5th year, and that draft grade says, hey, dude, you're a 7th-round pick or undrafted free agent, and the realistic scouts and the people you know, your big brother who played in the NFL, your best friend whose agent doesn't want to represent you, is just like, you're not an NFL player, dude. What do you mean? I'm a good college football player. I know, but you're not an NFL player. Well, I want to stay and play college football then. Well, you can't. 5 years is all you got. Well, I'm going to sue the NCAA, and I'm going to get 6 and 7 and 8 and 10 years. And that's why this suit is interesting, and that's why the results of this suit are interesting, because the slope gets slippery every time you remove a barrier. 5 for 5 will happen. Mark my words, they will win this suit. All right, now we welcome the rattlesnake himself.
What's up, man?
Trevor Riley, Utah football legend. How are you, sir?
Not bad. Good win on Saturday. I was in L.A. It was a great win.
How was the gathering? How was the Alumni Association tailgate?
It was fantastic. Chad Manis threw it, the old linebacker from the Utes. He's a cop now in Long Beach.
Okay.
So we got to hear some of his war stories.
I could see that easy. I can mentally picture old Chad Manis, full sleeve tattoo, right?
That's him, yep.
Yeah.
He's doing gang work. So he's
Wow.
Anyway, so there was a lot of people there from all generations. But I got to tell you, we put it on those boys from the Bruins, man. We put it on them, man. It was good to see. At all facets of the game, I would call it almost a perfect game outside of a special teams blunder here or there. It was pretty perfect.
It was great to see. It was actually, you got the coach's mindset, because it was immediately after the game, post-game, Kyle Whittingham sits down, talks to the media. All right, that was a great game. What did you – he's like, we had a couple special teams things. We got to clean. It's always good to have things to clean up. But you're absolutely right. Both sides of the ball. Dominant performance for the University of Utah. We'll get to the defense, because as a defensive player, I know you have your thoughts there. But what we were all holding our breath for in this offseason was, what is the offense going to look like? You're replacing Andy Ludwig. You bring in Devin Dampier to be what everyone hoped Cam Rising was able to be the last 2 years of his injury. And the performance that you got from drive number 1 was creativity, with efficiency, with physicality, 43 points on the board. Not a lot left to be desired from that offensive debut. How'd you assess it?
Well, I think that the only thing I would say that was bad was nothing. It was like perfect. I'm watching the game, and you're looking as a coach. You're always critiquing, right? You're kind of a hater as a coach. It's kind of one of those things where, as you're watching football, you're always trying to dissect and figure out what the heck is going on here. That's not good. So we can improve. I'm watching the game, and I'm saying, this is pretty much a dominant performance. I would say tackling in the open field against the quarterback, right? He showed himself. I'm talking about the kid from UCLA. He showed himself to be a heck of an athlete.
Yeah, man. Nico is elusive. He's got some talent.
Yeah, I got to talk to his parents and his family after the game. They stayed late. They were at a tailgate next to us, and this was late after the game. And if you watch the game, the guy has an unbelievable ability to get out of jams. Okay, now I watched our guy. He has a really good we got a quarterback can get out of a jam, and he can deliver the ball in the pocket. What else do you want in a guy? In this day and age with college football, you want a guy who can stand in there and deliver the ball, and then you want a guy who can make something happen when something breaks down. And we watched Dampier on some of those called boots. He just looks like a real quarterback now.
Yeah, he does.
And the whole team, when that happens, right, the whole team, it sets the tone for the whole team. And defensively and offense, I mentioned earlier that Smith Stone's going to be up for the Heisman this year. I got to tell you, man, him and Barton, they each got a touchdown, and they each played a big number of snaps on defense. Landry Barton, though, I think he led the team in tackles and had a touchdown reception.
That's right.
So we got some juice now, and that's going to help in the recruiting. So the whole game, just the whole thing, and it was in L.A., and you know what? We own L.A.
I like hearing that.
We own L.A., dude.
It sounds good.
What up,
actually,
L.A.? We own L.A., baby.
I'm gonna text that to a couple of my old Pac-12 radio buddies.
How do you lose to the Utes? How you in Los Angeles you lose to the Utes? we own you, dude. Well, in all seriousness, though, I thought it was a heck of a performance. And then Scally, they didn't know they didn't have a clue. They were locked up. We played man defense the second. Most of the game, and they couldn't get by us, dude. We locked them up.
Yeah, look, it's hard. I came on the show. We were off on Monday, right? I came on the show yesterday, and I was like, man, you don't want to gas people up too much because there's a lot of football left to be played. You don't want to overreact to like you said, a near flawless performance. But given the context, the offseason that this team had with the questions, the last 2 years of football more importantly, it's impossible not to feel relief, feel joy to watch this version of Utah football with new personalities, new faces. Look, I like the way that Wayshawn Parker ran the football.
Yeah.
I like the way that Devin Dampier conducted all of his business on Saturday. The offensive line, it's hard to live up to the billing when the billing is like, hey, man, you got to be a top 5 O-line in college football this year. That's what people are saying.
You're
and
right.
that game, the sample size available to us, there's no reason to believe they can't be a top 5 offensive line in college football this year.
I'm seeing a top 10 team, all right? We're already crept into the top 25, right? Because if you watch the tape, you're going to see a dominant performance. And we're going to beat Cal Poly this weekend. So then we're going to go 2-0. Who do we got after Cal Poly?
Wyoming.
We're going to be 3-0. Okay, so that's 3-0. All right, so then who do we have after that?
That's where things get a little bit more interesting because then you got Texas Tech.
Okay, so they have been buying players, right? They've been beating a lot of schools for guys. And I know about Texas Tech. I signed there out of high school. There ain't nothing there but cotton and oil, all right? And football, that's it, all right? They have a great football. They have a great football program. As far as like they want to pay for players, if you're paying for players, you're a great program to me. They got great backing, but I see us 3-0 headed into Big 12 play, and I'm feeling pretty good. Okay, I'm feeling real good about what we got going. We got to stay healthy. We got to stay healthy though.
Yeah, that'll be all things. I mean, we're making some assumptions now, and health is one of those assumptions. But Texas Tech at that time should be a ranked team. Right now, they're one spot ahead of the Utes in the top 25. Tech's got, like you said, they've got a really bright outlook where they acquired a bunch of talent. Their schedule between now and then, they demolished Arkansas Pine Bluff, which of course you're going to do.
It's a SWAC school, man.
Then you got Kent State. They're going to demolish Kent State. And then Oregon State, who is not the Beavers of old, unfortunately. And then Utah. So,
by the way, shout out to Elisa Tuyaki at Oregon State.
Is that where he's at now?
I believe so. Him and Mikey Jacobson, yeah.
All right. I like that.
I'm with you on that whole thing. It looks like it's going to be that'll be a big matchup because we're both probably going in there 3-0, right? I'm rooting for Oregon State against Texas Tech. But just saying, let's just say for having sense, we're 3-0. That's a big time game. And if we put it on those boys, right, that sets the tempo for the rest of the season. We just put it on the guys that spent a lot of money. They spent a lot of money this offseason, Texas Tech did. And if we can handle those guys, that puts us in that next tier where, shoot, this is a top 15 program. This is a top 10 team.
All right, we just talked about this. You go position by position, you go piece by piece. Offensive line looked awesome. Quarterback looked awesome. Running backs looked really good.
Yeah, good enough, yeah.
I'm not going to say as awesome as the other two position groups, all right? The wide receiver room, question mark still. Smith Snowden looks great when you line him up out there. Jackson Benny was running around looking fast. You didn't get the guys, the offseason additions. You didn't get the Ryan Davis. You didn't get Tobias Merriweather. You didn't get those individuals as involved as we would have liked to have seen. And if you were nitpicking, which why not? That's what we're here for.
Yep.
If you're nitpicking, you might want to say, I don't love that such important offensive production had to come from defensive players. So how do you get those guys more involved in the offensive game plan?
That's the question is, can you beat man coverage? Right, we talked about earlier on the flip side what Utah did to UCLA. They were covered. You watch the game, they were covered, man. And so what you don't want to have is that on our side. Can we beat man coverage? Matchup defense. They call it matchup. Some people, they play quarters, everybody, and it turns into man down the field. But you want to beat coverage where you're being covered. I know that sounds real rudimentary, but that's all we're talking about here is it's mano-a-mano. And to your point, we got to see some of that, especially from our speedsters on the outside, right? If we got playmakers like Barton and Smith Snowden, is that sustainable for a whole season? Can they play both ways, or is that going to drop off? Could be, but I'd like to see our two guys, 18 and whoever the other star was, I can't remember the number. They need to make plays against man coverage. They need to make plays down the field, and they need to be go up and get the football. And that's not really like a scheme thing. That's not really a quarterback thing. That's going to be a thing where I'm going to get this ball no matter what. And to your point, we didn't see that on Saturday. We didn't have to necessarily, but that's the one thing for concern. As you look down the road, right, defense is going to get a little tighter, okay? Can we win those matchups?
Well, I'm glad you said it's not a scheme thing, right? Scheme things are important. You got to be able to win schematically. You got to be able to outsmart your opponents. But there are times in every college football game, and most games come down to 5 or 6 different plays in 5 or 6 different possessions.
Yep.
And are you going to win those matchups? You expect that your running back's going to make a guy miss. You expect that your quarterback's going to look a safety off and get one of his guys open. But there are times when a wide receiver has to catch a 50-50 ball. And you don't want it to be a 50-50 ball when you're throwing it to a 6'4", 215, 220-pound receiver. You want to say, this is actually a 90-10 ball.
100%.
I know my guy's going to come down with it.
Yep.
You got to have that. And you didn't need it against UCLA, like you said. You're not going to need it against Cal Poly. You're probably not going to need it against Wyoming. But it might come down to that against Texas Tech, against Arizona State, against BYU. It might come down to those plays. Can my guy beat your guy? The answer has to be yes. Really, you got to have at least one guy in every position room where you can count on that yes.
I think about 2019, Zach Moss, okay? I remember in 2020, we came back after the season. Andy Ludwig was the OC. We watched every clip. I was working with the offense at that time. At the very last clip, Andy just shuts the film off, and he says, well, guys, let this be a lesson to us. We weren't that good. Zach Moss and Tyler Huntley, they made us good. Zach Moss was making everybody miss. He's running through people. Tyler Huntley's back there running around there making people miss. And when it came down to it, really, that's what it was, right? The scheme was whatever, but when it came down to those 5 or 6 plays, we had 2 guys on that team who could make them. And it was harder to win those other games because we didn't have the receiving core, to your point. And so the goal is to get the ball down the field. And so if we can throw the ball and win those matchup plays, I call them, that takes us to another level. Now we're playing with the big dogs because we can definitely run them. We can definitely run right through them with those big fellas up front and those tailbacks. Can we make plays on the ball down the field when the ball is in the air? That's the big question mark going forward. I think that the receiving class or the receiving group that they brought in is supposed to be pretty heralded. I mean, it's pretty highly, what they say, on paper, it's supposed to be one of our better ones we've ever had. I always just judge it on that. Are you winning your 50-50 balls? Are you, I play with Brandon Marshall, okay? And that guy I don't think he ever made a playoff game, but I'll tell you what, when we played on Sundays, you better double cover that guy because he's going to win every single one of them. I remember one time we had an onside kick, end of the game. He ain't never done no special teams. He comes over and says, I'm on this onside team. And the special team coach is like, okay, guess who got the ball? And that's the kind of attitude we want at receiver. Do we want that T.O., that Brandon Marshall, that David Reed, right? That Steve Smith. Steve Smith's a prime example, right? Steve Smith's, 5'9", maybe?
He had no business winning the balls that he won.
Come on, man. But you know what? It's the mentality. All right, you mix that with some ability. But I look at receiver, it's a straight mentality. You're a boxer. It's one-on-one. You got to win that situation. So I'm looking for that guy. I'm hoping it's 18. He's big. He's fast. He can run. I'm hoping it's 18.
He did have the one catch, 36 yards in the game. So, I mean, there is that big playability. There's that. And Coach Witt talked about how he's got the long stride, kind of gobbles up. He's deceptively fast because it doesn't look like his legs are moving so fast, but he's covering so much ground, right? And, again, we're being nitpicky here because in a 43-10 win, that's what you have to do. Everything went so well, you have to start saying, all right, where can we get fooled into complacency here and whatnot? But I want to pick your brain about the defensive side of the ball. The Utah volleyball head coach, Beth Lanier, is going to join us next. We got like a 10, 15-minute conversation with her. Can you hang out?
Yes.
And then we'll talk more after that.
Hey, man, I'm a CAF champion in volleyball, okay?
Is that
2006, baby. Yeah.
Let's go.
San Diego Southern Section, okay?
Let's go.
What's up with that, baby?
All right, we'll talk a little volleyball next. Utah head coach Beth Lanier, like I said. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show on a Wednesday. We got Utah volleyball conversation coming here. Beth Lanier, the head coach, set to join us as the Utes are off to a solid start in their season. 3-0, beat a ranked Dayton team, 3-1. Lafayette College, which is the volleyball equivalent of the Utah-Cal Poly matchup, won that one and beat Washington State as well. And up next, tomorrow, it is a very good Texas A&M team coming in to the Huntsman Center. Beth Lanier, head coach of Utah Volleyball, joins us now. Coach, welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
We appreciate you giving us some time. Your Utes are 3-0. What have you seen in the first three that you've liked, and what are the things that you're working on right now?
You know what? I was so pleasantly I was a little bit surprised. I thought we played opening. I thought for our youth, we showed a tremendous amount of composure and really had things going quite well for opening weekend. So, at least with a 3-0 start, a win over, top 25 team Dayton, very good. And then Washington State was a very, very good too, and we took care of them in 3. So, yeah, it was a great opening weekend for us for sure.
Coach, we're having some connection issues, so we're going to try to fix the technical difficulty real quick. James, let's try to get that done. Like I said, it's number 9 Texas A&M. Is we'll try to fix the connection and the technical difficulty there with Coach Lanier. But what you're able to parse out from her answer, and obviously what we've seen already, you started off your opening weekend with Dayton. And Dayton is a top 25 team. Now, Utah was kind of like the also receiving votes kind of a position in college volleyball, as coaches told us in our in-person conversation last week. And she just alluded to it again there. This is a young team at the University of Utah. So to be able to go up and perform that well against a more established squad, a more experienced squad, a squad that, for all the value of preseason rankings, is a little bit more highly thought of, it really is impressive so far what you've seen. And, of course, in the early season, all you can do in any sport is you beat the teams that they put in front of you. Schedule is what it is, and the volleyball schedule for Utah right now is an unblemished record with 3 wins in a young team that has built a little bit of momentum heading into their biggest early season matchup. And maybe, honestly, most likely, this is going to be the most stacked squad, it looks like, that Utah volleyball faces this year. BYU's got some potential, as they always do, but this is a very, very tough test early. All right, Coach, sorry about the technical difficulties. I think we got it worked out.
Okay, great.
Okay, hey. All right, so tomorrow it's a Texas A&M team, and I was just kind of filibustering there about how this is maybe – it's not only early season a tough test, this is one of the toughest tests you're going to have to try and pass maybe all season long. What do we know about Texas A&M, and what's the difficulty here?
Yeah, great comment and great question. They may be we go to Nebraska and play next week. So between Nebraska and Texas A&M in the opening 2 weeks, we've definitely set ourselves up with a strong schedule. Texas A&M is extremely athletic. They play high and physical. I think we are that type of team, also. They're just a little bit, and the other difference between them and us is they're very experienced. So it's going to be a big test for us. But we like that we have them at the Huntsman Center. That's always a big difference. So, yeah, we're going to have our work cut out for us. But from a lot of the things that happened first weekend gives you more confidence going into a match like this.
We've talked about the relative lack of experience in the youth on your team. And sometimes we see that, you don't know what you don't know, so what you don't know can't hurt you. Have you noticed that in these first 3 matches where your gals are playing free because maybe in a weird, twisted way, the lack of experience is almost helpful?
No, I agree to that, Sean. I said that to my staff a number of times throughout the weekend. I'm like, we're just playing. Like we're playing, not tight at all. And, I do think a lot of times that is just the, freshmen just playing. I mean, at one point we had 3 freshmen in the front row against Washington State, and we started 3 freshmen on Sunday. And, you look out, and to be honest, 2 sophomores. So 5 of our 7 were underclassmen. And I think they don't, God bless them. They just maybe don't get what all these matches mean, and that's not a bad thing. Sometimes we all put too much pressure on ourselves, and you've got to. If you ask any athlete, they want to have fun. They want to play loose. They want to play relaxed, and I thought that's what we did opening weekend for sure, and that would serve us well tomorrow night against Texas A&M for sure. Also.
21 kills against Dayton, and again, that's a preseason ranked Dayton team. What's the kind of number you're looking for if you want to come out on the positive side of things against Texas A&M?
Yeah. So Cameron Gabadlo, our junior returning mentioned All-American, she had 21 kills, and that was a career high for her. And she was just so ready for this year, and I was so pleased. She averaged like over 5 kills per set, one of the in the country on the opening weekend. So we need her to be good, obviously. Bonnie Powell played libero for us. That was her first time playing libero, and she had 23 kills against Dayton. 23 digs against Dayton. And so there were just so many positive takeaways. But we're going to have to find ways to get kills against a really athletic team. And so I don't know that we know yet what's going to break down first, because something's going to break down when you have this much shoot. I'm just waiting, and I'm planning on it. I just don't know where it's going to happen. And so we just keep working on kind of everything and trying to move the dial in every aspect. So, the other player that played great this weekend was Emery Moyahi. She just got loose, and she was bouncing balls, and everything that we thought she could do this year in her position, she did this weekend, and she's one of our best athletes. So, her and Cameron Gabadlo, like, they're athletic, they play high, and we need them to be good to play with this team. And then, the support around them, they just need to, play their roles, and that's kind of what happened this past weekend. So, you're going to depend on your experienced players that are very, very good, and then you just keep moving the dial with those younger players and keep getting them up to speed and hope they can play that role, and that's what they did this weekend.
When you're talking about, some positional shifting, like in the case of Levani Key-Powell, and you get a performance like that, does it reinforce that, all right, that's where she's going to be, that's where we're going to keep her, or is there going to be some versatility and maybe further tinkering with your lineup as the season progresses?
Yeah, well, fortunately, we're probably running into what a lot of teams run into early in the season, and that we've got some tweaks and stuff, things that aren't feeling quite up to speed yet. And so we may be forced to look at a couple of lineup changes. We're trying not to. We're trying to keep things as settled as possible, just for that comfort level early in the season. But we're going to probably be forced to maybe make a couple of changes from what we did this past weekend. So it is what it is, and you just have to adjust. But we'd like to keep Bonnie in that libero position, but she's a very good attacker. She's 5'10", but she jumps out of the gym, and so there's a chance that she changes jerseys and does a little bit of hitting for us because we're a little bit low in depth with a couple injuries. So we'll see. We'll see what tomorrow brings, but I think there could be a little bit of adjustments.
I mean, this might be a stupid question, so forgive me if it is. But does the altitude ever come into play when you're at home against a Texas team, especially?
Yeah, there are no stupid questions, Sean, and I love how curious you are about volleyball. The time I've talked to you this year, I've made you think about the game in a different way, so that's a good thing. No, altitude has a big effect in volleyball, mostly in serving. There's less air resistance at this altitude, and so a lot of serves at sea level, a lot of serves go long for them. and vice versa. When we go down to sea level, we serve a lot of balls in the net. And so we have to be aware of that and adjust. But it does, and I get more tired just like every other sport. So it can definitely be an advantage, especially in the serving game. And we tend to miss a lot more serves up at altitude.
You said you need, some of these young players to be ready to play high and all that. Is there a strategic adjustment that you can make to kind of take some of that out of another team if you feel like they've got a significant advantage in, I don't know, size, athleticism, whatever? Is there a way you can shift your serve, your approach to get fewer of those, demanded blocks or hitting opportunities for the opposition?
Yeah, there's I mean, my staff, my assistants put just a massive amount of hours into prepping for a team. And serve is probably the best way to your opponent in the game of. If you can get them to not perfectly, they go down from 3 attackers to 2 attackers. And now all of a sudden you're blocked, because they can't get the ball to the middle attacker. So all of a sudden your block now has less options to defend. And so the goal of serving is to get them out, we call it out of system, and reduce the number of offensive options that they have. And so and we serve very well over the weekend, and it's something we invested in a lot in the off season. Past that, we have scheming that we'll do in our block. So we have to make decisions on, do we want to go front there? They have 2 very good middles and they have a very good opposite player, right side. And so do we go, front their middles and make sure that we've got them taken care of at the risk of giving up as good a block maybe on pin? So, yeah, there's all those kind of decisions, and you look at, what is our best blocker? Who does she match up against? Can we leave her one-on-one maybe and go focus on another attacker? So I've been in the war room today, and I've just been in there, and these are the kind of conversations that we're having, trying to figure out how to match up and scheme against a really good Texas A&M team.
Well, Coach, we wish you and your whole staff and all your gals good luck against the Texas A&M Aggies. That is a 6 p.m. match at the Huntsman Center. If you don't have tickets, they are available now. Go get them. Support our Utes. Coach, thanks for your time as always.
Yeah, this is going to be an exciting match. I hope people come on up.
Beth Lanier, head coach of Utah Volleyball. By the way, if you're not going to the Huntsman Center, that match is going to be on ESPN2. Number 9 ranked Texas A&M team right now. A very, very tough test, but so far so good with this young Utah team in passing those tests. 3-0 on the season. Back to Utah football we go. Trevor Riley was kind enough to wait through that conversation with Beth Lanier. We'll talk a little of the Utah defensive performance against UCLA and, of course, what to expect from a lesser opponent in Cal Poly this week. Sean O'Connell Show continues on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, big thanks to Beth Lanier, Utah volleyball head coach, who joined us earlier. Big thanks to Trevor Riley, who's hanging out with us for another segment here to talk a little Utah defensive performance. You know, last week I was picking your brain about, hey, man, can we get Sac Lake City back? Can we get a big-time pressure rate from this defense? And I think that UCLA's offensive line stinks to high heavens, so it's maybe not the best litmus test, but you can only play who they put in front of you, and I thought that Utah collapsed the pocket incredibly well. You got good push from the interior defensive line, and I threw out this stat earlier on the show. John Henry Daly, according to Pro Football Focus College, leads the country right now in quarterback pressures. He had 7 in that game.
I think his win rate was 39%, which is unheard of.
That's pretty darn good.
So Fano, I mean, a great win rate is 20%, 1 out of 5, right? So I think he was around 40%, which is huge. So they got 2 edge guys that are really getting after it. I would say the biggest issue going forward, can they generate pressure without pressuring? I think we talked about that last week. Meaning, can we play coverage and still get there with 4? And, I got to tell you, I'm pretty happy about the results on Saturday.
Yeah, they did on Saturday get pressure with mostly 4. There was the issue, which I guess is an early season thing. It's also, you just got to give credit where it's due to Nico. There was plenty of times where he was in trouble and almost in the grasp, and he just slips out and finds a way to extend the play with his legs, get to the sticks, extend the drive. I'm sure people have realized this by now, but if UCLA did not have Nico Iamaleava in that game, this would have been a 60-0 type performance.
This would have been a Pine Bluff, okay, or Pine Bluff, Texas Tech.
Yeah, sure.
And I say that with all due respect to UCLA. I got to tell you that watching that kid play, and when I said I talked to his family after the game, I talked to him about one thing specifically. I said, the kid has unbelievable instincts to not get tackled. Now, with that being said, we were going a little too low. If you go back and watch the tape, right, we're taking shots at his legs. A tall guy like that, if you watch that ball, right, I'm aiming for that football. He chicken wings that ball out there. So I think they'll fix some of that tackling stuff. But to your point, that he's a superior athlete. He's one of the better athletes we'll see maybe the whole season at that position. So it's a good litmus test. We got to tackle better in the open field against those great athletes.
Tackling is one of those things that, man, when you see any kind of missed tackles piling up for a Utah defense, we've seen, season debuts where it's hurt you in the past. The Florida game is the most obvious example when they were down at the Swamp. And Coach Witt, he said in his first post-game presser this week, he said, we hardly tackled at all in fall camp because they were worried about health and they wanted to preserve the health of the team. That's a double-edged sword, as you well know, because tackling is one of those things that you get better at by practicing it.
Yep.
And if you don't practice it, you could potentially have a few missed tackles, and you did against UCLA. And, of course, you're going to have an opportunity to hone that craft against Cal Poly. But at some point, this defense has to be elite at tackling if they want to be an elite defense.
I call it taking the extra stride, okay? So the extra rotation, actually. And what I mean by that is if you again, watch the tape, we're taking shots at knees, okay? Then that works sometimes, but then again, if you put that on tape continually, right, they start practicing against it. What you want to do when you tackle, for all you youngsters out there, anybody who's playing high school ball, Pop Warner, you want to take the extra step. So you want to get toes on toes almost, and then you want to bring both those arms like double uppercuts. And the reason why you want to take the extra stride is so you don't end up diving. And so they'll work on it this week. To your point, if you're not tackling, how do you practice that? You can do bags, but when a guy's moving around, you got a moving target, there's nothing like tackling a guy to practice tackling. It's just one of those things. Like in wrestling, double leg takedown. Either you practice it or you don't practice. You better practice it because that's what you got to do.
Yeah, drillers are killers is what they say.
That's it.
You just got to drill it. You got to do it over and over and over again. And by the way, it's not a criticism of the coaching staff. It worked out fine, but it is a strategic decision you have to make. It's kind of a big picture thing you have to make as a coach and as a staff to say, all right, where's our trade-off going to be? Injuries have killed this program the last 2 years, and you can practice physical and you can slug it out Monday through Wednesday, even in game weeks, but then, you're going to have some attrition. You're going to have some guys getting banged up, and they made the choice, it sounds like, in fall camp this year to go, err on the side of caution that way. And if you're willing to do that, you also have to be willing to deal with the fallout.
I think that over the past probably 10 years, if you outside of a few seasons, Utah has had a reputation of being not healthy in November and December. And that's what we want to avoid, right? We want to avoid losing our guys at the end of the season, just law of attrition, right? I think Coach Witt's on the right path here. When you have Ferraris, you got to service them, right? You can't drive them all the time. And so it's one of those things where I think that we'll get better, and that's why you play the warm-up games. You better not lose these warm-up games, but that's why you schedule them, because you kind of want to save yourself and play a half against these two teams, and then you get your other guys in, and eventually the whole team starts tackling better and starts doing blocking better. Tackling and blocking, though, those are two things Utah's hung their hat on for 30 years.
Yeah.
And so it is a weird thing to hear that from the head coach, but I agree with him. I'm running a team right now, and we have those conversations daily. How hard do we want to go today? We got a game on Saturday. How hard do we want to go? And if you're not a team that has 2 or 3 deep, you better take that real serious.
It's interesting to hear, of course everyone's asking about, hey, the workload for Smith Snowden. I think his total, he was 45 snaps total for the game or something? It's a totally reasonable number of snaps.
Absolutely.
It's fine. His body's going to be able to withstand
Especially
that.
DB, man. You half the plays, you're not doing much.
Yeah, he's going to be able to withstand that. We're not talking about Travis Hunter taking 120 snaps a game or something like that. If Lander's playing, 60, 70 snaps, and if Smith played 45 or 50 snaps, it was weird to hear Coach Witt say, we made sure we're doing the research and we're picking brains. And they talked to the sports science community at University of Colorado, because, of course, there was a big-time effort, right, to make sure, hey, Travis Hunter is going to be doing something that really we haven't seen in college football since they were wearing leather helmets.
Yeah.
So how do we manage his week? What do we feed his body and things like that? And it's interesting to hear that from a guy who we just always say, he's old school, he's tough as nails, he's just going to have you run through the wall until the wall breaks down or your body does. But it's not done that way anymore.
No, the hard part about nowadays, they say back in my day we were tougher. Well, we did 2-a-days, okay, and we also trained harder during the season because the off seasons weren't as intense. Mm-hmm. They weren't as focused. Now with the off season, right, and now it's pro ball, it's basically year round. You have an opportunity to train a kid for 6 months before he goes out to play, and so it makes it just. In the NFL, you don't even tackle anymore after October. You don't tackle during practice unless you're Belichick, but you don't tackle. So as this thing scales, you talked about earlier about 5, 6, 7 years of pro ball eligibility. I've always said it. Eventually, you're going to have where the second best league, right, is going to be college. Yeah. And right now, that's not necessarily the case, except it makes the most money. I mean, if you compare the XFL to college football is still not considered AAA. I know that's weird, man, but it's really not. It's considered AA when you look at the big scheme of things. And so as this thing scales more and more towards the NFL model, I bet you there'll be the thing where we won't even be allowed to do padded practices. If there's not already league rules, they only have a certain amount of padded practices you'll be allowed during the season.
Yeah.
I think we're ahead of it at Utah. I think Coach Witt's doing the right thing.
Yeah, they've done. I talked to Doug Alasaya, and he's like, everything we do for the way they lift now is done to, it's scientifically based. It's all data-based production, and it's about, energy output rather than just moving as much weight as you can. I mean, intuitively, we as humans, we understand these numbers. Like, this guy can bench press 500 pounds or whatever. Now the teams, okay, cool, we'll give you that number, but they want to know how many horsepower you're generating effectively on these machines, which is a lot less intuitive for people to understand.
Well, I remember going to the combine, and they had this test where they test your leg strength, and they use a machine to see, well, are you quad dominant or hamstring dominant? And they said, why would they do this? They want to see how your body is, because if you're quad dominant, you're more likely to sustain knee injuries versus if you're hamstring and glute dominant. And so as that, that was 10 years ago. Yeah. You can imagine how that scaled down. I've talked about AA, AAA. It's getting to the point now where, and I've always said this, I think eventually, just to kind of segue a little bit, the Raiders or the Broncos, we're going to be a club team of them. Now I say club, we'll be affiliated, like Real Salt Lake. Aren't they affiliated with Real Madrid? If I'm not mistaken, the Real Soccer Group. Real is Real. And I could see that happening in football where it's like, eventually there's going to be some everybody's going to come together and say, well, let's put this thing together. And I think training has a big thing to do with it. If you're trying to get players that are, top shelf, I call it, you want to make sure they're trained correctly. So the NFL has, they have a bone to pick here. They have
you
a
see
say
like
in this.
a Salt Lake Bees as an Angels affiliate kind of a deal.
I mean, it's already headed there, in my opinion, in other ways, but it's headed there because it's a regional sport, dude. We're city state.
I can't abide by the beloved Utes being associated with the Broncos or the Raiders.
No, I get it, but
I can't.
You get what I'm saying, though, right? It's a regional. I mean, football. That's why college football is so great. It's a regional sport, man.
Yeah.
That's why you can still get South Dakota that sells out 30,000. It's like, really, they don't have football. But that's the thing, is we're headed towards a unification of training, a unification of scheduling, right? A unification of coaching, right? Belichick's now coaching North Carolina.
Yeah.
Really?
If you want to.
So
yeah,
exactly. The whole thing is coming towards, it's starting to come together as one big conglomerate, one big thing.
All right. What do you need to see against Cal Poly from Utah this week?
I want to see us rush for 300 yards. Okay, that'd be a nice thing. Okay, get the O-line moving. I want to see these two tailbacks. I think we're pretty good on Saturday. I'd like to see them run up and down the field. And obviously, we want to see some big plays on offense, throwing the ball down the field. But ideally, we have the starters out by halftime, and we rush for 300.
I need to see, because I am petty like this, all right? BYU scored 69 points on Portland State, all right? So I need 70. I need 70 from Utah against Cal Poly. The Cougs got, 51 yards of total offense put up against them. So yeah, wow. I need it to be 49 yards total offense for Cal Poly this week.
So when does BYU play Utah? At what point in the season?
October 18th.
October 18th. Okay, so there's a chance that we'll both be undefeated or one loss going into that game.
Absolutely. I think that the bigger question is right now, because BYU's got an easier schedule, and I think the big question is, Utah's got to play Texas Tech and Arizona State before that matchup, and you got a tough road trip. I don't think West Virginia is a particularly good team, but that's a long haul to get all the way out there to Morgantown. So I think that, the bigger question we had when we were evaluating the schedule preseason was just like, how do you get to that game healthy, good to go, in a good position, ranked, that kind of thing. And, what we saw in week one gives me a lot more optimism that is a very meaningful game down in Provo when it happens.
Both staffs are just copy. I mean, Utah and BYU are the same. They're just the same in so many ways.
People got big mad at me when I said this, and I'm going to say it again. But BYU football is now Utah football
from 10 years ago.
That's the staff.
Yeah,
it's who's running it.
No, you're right. I mean, Gary Anderson's over there. Okay, Gary's the biggest Ute I know, man.
Jay, Chad Kalani, obviously, guys that helped shape Utah football's identity in that early Pac-12 era, especially, are now shaping BYU's football identity.
Yeah, it's a great point, man. That's why I'm excited for this game. I'm excited for the state of Utah in general for football. We're becoming a football. We used to be a basketball state, okay?
I know.
And we've had that. Everyone's talked about that, but really, we're really starting to become on the national stage. I really believe that one of our two teams is going to make that playoff this year. I really believe that.
I hope it's the right one.
I told you before. I'm betting on Utah. Okay, I think we got a superior roster.
I tell you what, it's week one was the revelation we hoped it would be, and all you can do is hope for the same thing heading into week 2 and week 3 and beyond.
And the last thing I'll say about that whole thing, I'm telling you this again, we're gonna have some buzz around the Heisman Trophy if we keep winning these games, dude. We got two guys going both ways and a quarterback who's pretty dynamic. We keep winning, guys. We're going to have a name in that. We're going to have a name in it.
All right, let's go. Trevor Riley, we were talking about the Kool-Aid yesterday. All right, he's mixing up a new batch for Wednesday. And I'm drinking it, baby.
I like it, baby.
Let's go. Trevor, always great to see you. Thanks for stopping in.
Absolutely. We'll see you on Saturday at Jiu-Jitsu. What's the name of the gym?
Elite Performance.
Hey, guys, check this place out, okay? Jeremy Horn, Sean O'Connell, the best in the business in Utah. Go check them out. I'll be there Saturday in the morning. Come check us out.
All right, let's go. We'll take a quick one here. Alex Markham's going to join us on the other side, publisher of Ute Nation. Little insider information coming next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Experience a celebration of cannabis culture, music, and community at the first annual Canna Fan Fest, set in the heart of Salt Lake City at Granary Live. That's happening September 27th, one-day festival with live musical performances featuring Crooked Kings, Changing Lanes, Analia Brown, and more. ESPN700sports.com for the full lineup of performances, ticket links, and all the information. Canna Fan Fest coming to Salt Lake City. Hour number 3 on the Sean O'Connell Show, and we welcome in Alex Markham, publisher of Ute Nation, Utes Insider. Alex, welcome. How are you, sir?
What's going on, man? I'm doing good. How are you?
You know, I'm still trying to come down from the weekend, if we're being honest. Like, I try to be professional. I try to be reasonable. I try to pitch it right down the middle when it comes to this Utah football team. But I got so excited over what we saw from the offense in particular that I'm having a hard time, being the pro about it and not letting my fan side come out. Tell me how you're feeling about the offensive performance from week 1 against UCLA.
Man, I feel you on that, but I'm also going to give some dose of reality, right? I'm on the level that you are, but at the same time, too, some of the Ute Nation podcasts that I've been doing with some of the former players, like, for instance, Zach Moss and Cal Beck, they made a very good point on, this offense looks great, but it was easy work, right? And sometimes you don't want that easy work, And so what they were meaning by that is if you take a look back in that 495 yards of total offense, which great imagination with the play calling, kept UCLA off balance all night, the use of the two-way players, that was fun to watch, right? But if you go and you take a look back at it, I don't know that there were very many chunk plays, if any at all. A lot of those were very methodical, and they were getting just yards after yards, which is a great thing, right? But you want to see the receivers gain a little bit more separation to be able to hit some of those deeper balls, when Devin was running around in the pocket. I mean, when they were talking about him having sometimes 8 seconds in practice, they weren't kidding, but then you take a look back at some of this stuff and, the receivers still weren't getting open, which at the same time too, you got Merriweather and you got Simmons who joined the team in the summer, so they didn't have spring ball. So they're still all getting acclimated and getting used to each other, and so it's a valuable time these next 3 weeks with the opponents that they have to be able to get that repetition with each other, gain that rapport. And man, as soon as that happens, this offense is going to be fun, right? But right now you're sitting there and you're looking at it. They put up a ton of yards, but you want to see some of those bigger chunk plays. So again, I'm right there with you, when it comes down to that excitement. But, hearing some of those guys talk about it the last few days, I completely get where they're coming from too.
It's a point well made. Tobias Merriweather had the one catch for 36 yards. That counts as a chunk play. J.J. Buchanan pulled down an 18-yard reception. Jackson Benny had a 17-yard reception. Hunter Andrews had a 25-yard run. And then Bird Ficklin and Devin Dampier each had 16-yard runs. But chunk plays are 15 yards or more, and that's it. That's what you had in this game. And that, again, we're nitpicking because 43-10, and that's what you do after 43-10 when everything looked really, really good. But yeah, it's a well-made point, and it's something that I know that this offense wants more of is the chunk plays because the other thing here, and I've held off on belaboring the point too much because I don't want to take wind out of the sails, but this UCLA team stinks, right? I mean, they're bad.
It looks that way. I mean, look, like Deshaun Foster, like the guy, great person. I don't know how good of a head coach he is, and then, you bring in Nico, who, some of my guys have joked around calling him, saying they can't pronounce his name, just calling him Nico Amalivia, that was quite the spectacle when it came down to that with Tennessee, and just the fact that UCLA would bring him in, like that, it's you kind of wonder where the program is at mentally and if they're in the right headspace to an extent, right? And so, yeah, I mean, you don't know what's there. I know they tried to spend a lot of money right after the spring camp that they had. And so there's still a lot of guys too that, like I was talking about with Simmons and Merriweather with Utah, they didn't show up for spring ball, and so they're still getting acclimated. So you could be looking at a pretty bad UCLA team that still has a lot of potential, or you could be looking at a UCLA team that, a quarter of the way through the season, things start clicking and they start looking a little bit better. I mean, they're not going to be top half of the Big Ten by any means at all, but just how bad are they? Because we've seen them for the majority of the time when they were in the Pac-12. They were on the bottom end of the spectrum.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to beat any of those allegations anytime soon in the Big Ten because that league is very, very tough. But we won't have to worry about UCLA the rest of the year, so we probably won't. Cal Poly, the Cal Poly game this is a program that is brought in to be cannon fodder, and they're going to get a check to show up, and Utah's trying to get a tune-up game before they head into tougher tests. And I don't like the Wyoming matchup, but we'll stay focused on Cal Poly right now. What do you want to see against an FCS opponent like Cal Poly to prove that this team is growing week to week? We talk so much about how the improvement from week 1 to week 2 is supposed to be kind of the big leap that you make in season. Well, you're going down a level in competition, and you're playing at home, which is going to make it a little bit easier. So what do you need to see against Cal Poly for you to feel like, yeah, they actually did improve upon a really good performance from week 1?
Right. With some of the stuff I mentioned at the start, there's still enough things, Ideally, you want to see the starters play no more than till halftime. If past that, maybe you give them one series into the third quarter, right? So within that amount of time, Devin Dampier has become a national darling, and rightfully so, right? But at the same time, too, you want to see him be a little bit more selective on his run plays and being smarter with it. Granted, you don't want to coach that out of him because that's what makes him so special, but you've got to find ways to maybe get the running backs a little bit more involved than Devin to take that load off him. And, granted, it doesn't matter against Cal Poly, but it's just one of those, a glorified scrimmage to an extent, to just kind of get that in, get everybody used to that, and go from there. From that, Utah, it was fun watching the two-way guys. The fact that, is it sustainable? Who knows yet? Nobody's going to know that until maybe a halfway through the season at least, right? And so you want to see the guys that are the legit receivers, are the legit running backs, are the legit tight ends, being the ones that are really stepping up and making those big plays. Because I don't have the stats in front of me, but I believe Smith was the leading receiver. And
that's correct.
And Lander had that big play. And then you had Jackson Benny, who I think he had one catch for like 17 yards or something like that. They threw his way a bunch, and they threw him a bunch of deep balls. But more than anything, he was kind of that guy that was the deep threat to just kind of take the top off and alleviate things. And with that, Zipper was a game-time decision from what I was told. So there's nothing bad going on with him, but you need him stepping into more of a role like that. And then as long as the mainstay guys are able to do that and hold their weight, that's important. That's what you want to see. And then where the two-way guys can come in and make their mark, awesome. Outside of that, really when it comes down to it, what's going to go on with Bert Thicklin and Isaac Wilson? They've talked about who's QB2, and then, Whittingham made a point to say Isaac was. Same time, too, Jason Beck said that they were QB2A and QB2B. Obviously, Bird got the run at the end of the UCLA game, but is that more because it was a running situation, right? So you want to see those guys get in, gain valuable reps. That's going to be crucial and important. Along with that, too, you don't know how long some of the guys that got dinged up on the defensive line are going to be out. So you want to see those young freshmen who, man, I'd love to hear your take on this, but those guys look phenomenal, especially with it being their first game. You want to see those guys just step up more and more and be ready a lot faster than anybody was probably hoping or thinking that they would have to be.
To answer the question that was kind of implied in there, I thought absolutely phenomenal play by Pupu Sepulona and even better by Carson Kaufusi. I think that I think that those guys. Now, if it hadn't been for Nico, I think that the pass rush ends up probably with 6 or more sacks. They ended up with 4 on the game, and I think that that young group especially was really good at collapsing the pocket, meaning they're winning their matchup against the offensive lineman, but finishing that play, which of course is something that comes with experience, was a little bit more difficult against Nico because he just finds a way to get out and he's harder to bring down. And, the same thing that people are going to be saying about Devin is true about Nico, except he's playing behind a far inferior offensive line than what Devin is playing behind. But yeah, I think that, you'll see as the season progresses where Carson Kaufusi is going to use that physicality. He's going to blow up an offensive lineman. And instead of then the quarterback slipping past him, he's going to be able to make sure that he corrals that or at least slows the guy down, puts him in a pile, and then, gets another half sack or two in each game because of it. And that's, that's just the growth you expect from young players, especially young defensive linemen, because I've said it over and over again. I'll say it again. That is not a position where you're supposed to be physically ready to play as a freshman. It's supposed to take you time to get that man strength and grow your body into the, 280 to 320 that you need to be playing that position at the University of Utah in this defensive system. And these guys are way ahead of schedule.
And you mentioned the weight, right? And what was crazy and just shocking to me, and look, Polynesians, I mean, you've been around here your whole life. You've seen how fast they can put on weight, right? And Carson Kaufusi showed up at the U about 265 pounds, 6'6", 265. That was in February. He's up to 6'6", 305 and counting.
Hey, look, I'm not that impressed. I could gain 40 pounds. I could gain 40 pounds in 6 months. All right. It just wouldn't look like that. It wouldn't be functional.
Right?
All right.
Same. But yeah, I mean, that stuff's impressive. I don't know what Sepulona was. I try to avoid that first name, man, because oh my goodness. But yeah, Sepulona.
I love it.
I don't know.
I love it. I love when
right.
I love when Coach Witt is sitting down post game and saying like, "Man, Pupu is great. He's going to be awesome. We love Pupu."
And then the old days before Nate changed his name, but when it was Fakafua, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what he started off as, but like you take a look at some of the weight that those guys have gained. I mean, that is one huge win that Utah has had in this offseason is just the amount of weight that those guys have gained that they've needed to gain. Like you had defensive ends come in that were like maybe transfers and everything that, you look at Holtzclaw, for instance. He was nowhere near game ready other than like your typical, early years of Trevor Riley, early years of Nate Orchard pass rushing, right? Just pass rush specialties. And next thing you know, I want to see he's up to 245 pounds.
I think he came in the 220s. So, yeah, he needed that weight.
Right. And then everybody was worried when Keanu left. And plenty of the people in the know with the program were just kind of sitting back saying like, okay, look, like as long as some of these guys that are borderline defensive ends and defensive tackles can gain that weight, Utah's going to be fine because Utah's always fine at that position. That's what happened with Jonah Le'ea. And that's somebody that they've been anticipating for a long time. I want to say he probably put on about 25, 30 pounds in the off season. So again, all credit to Utah's weight staff and nutrition staff. They got the guys at the crucial positions ready to be able to go.
When you look around the rest of the Big 12, BYU had a really impressive game against a trash opponent. TCU on a national stage against North Carolina, highlighted game, looked really, really good. Iowa State has been impressive. Has your expectation for the kind of power structure of the Big 12 changed at all after week one?
I don't think so. I mean, Arizona State didn't have the best game, but Arizona State's going to be fine. Everybody wants to talk saying that they were what they were because of Scadaboo. I want to give Dillingham a little bit more credit than that, especially with the quarterback play that they have. BYU is going to be up there. TCU, I love seeing them back. All is right in the world if Utah, BYU, and TCU, all Old Mountain West boys are competitive. It's fun to see. The one that I'm still going to be curious on for a while, and man, Texas Tech fans hate it when I say this, but look, they've had, I want to say, 2 or 3 10-win seasons in at least over 50 years. And, they've been crowing because they're spending the oil money and there's those high expectations, but they still need to do something. They still need to prove something. And yeah, they put up 60-something points, but they need to have that track record. So they're the one team I'm just not sold on yet, but they're the one team that can potentially cause a lot of problems for everybody. And then Iowa State's just consistent. So I would say that, when it comes down to it and just seeing Utah's performance and seeing how they were in key areas that everybody was wondering, okay, well, is this a weakness? It's definitely a question when it comes to the position groups. They showed a lot that first game, to the point where I feel pretty confident in saying, as long as, God forbid, as long as Devin can stay healthy, Utah is going to be right in the thick of it and should be not just competing for the Big 12 championship, but putting themselves in a very nice spot for the CFP, when all the cards fall.
Oh man, I love hearing the words, but I also hate it because it's like we're all overreacting so much to what we've seen against a really bad UCLA team. But I also, this version of good, I think, is the version of good that translates regardless of who you're playing. When you're talking like physicality along an offensive line, it's like the tool in all levels of football that allows you to win. And you add to that, a quarterback who's now making good decisions and is dynamic with his legs and things like that. I mean, yeah, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. It's just
go ahead, man.
No,
go ahead. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you know what I was going to say. Just like you got to like not get too far ahead of yourself. But there's no train, or there's nothing that can stop the train between now and Texas Tech. And I don't know how fast and how much steam and how much coal I should be shoveling onto the fire in these next 3 weeks, because Cal Poly's not going to be anything. And obviously Wyoming is slightly tougher and that road trip sucks, but I think you're going to be fine. And I'm not even going to mention the injury thing, because that's the only thing that can stand in your way. Before we let you go, you and I share a particular affection for Coach Mack. And he gets his place in the Ring of Honor this weekend. For me, that's going to be a very, very meaningful moment, and I'm proud to have played for him, although not at the University of Utah. But I'm proud of the impact he had on my life and allowing me to go and play one season for him at Weber State. He's a great man, and I just wanted your thoughts on him going into the Ring of Honor.
Oh man. I could almost get choked up on it, because I've jokingly called him, but seriously meant it over the years too, I've jokingly called him Uncle Mac. He's a phenomenal person, not just a phenomenal figurehead for the University of Utah program over the years. And his impact is still felt to this day. The U Nation podcast that we've been doing over this last week, we have drilled that in endlessly, just talking about, just the family culture and everything that has been so ingrained ever since he was here, and just how important it was. And he was the foundation of Utah football. Urban was the torch, and Kyle is the person that lit that bastard and just took it to the next level. So Utah football is not Utah football without Coach Mack. I love that he's still around the program. I love anytime I can hear any of you former players that have had any kind of experience with him, just talk about him and talk about your experiences. And, I just sit back and laugh, because, man, it's stuff that I've seen with him. And I've had, memories that'll last a lifetime with him too, just from different little things on the side. I gotta share this because I loved this and this was so funny. So I've done podcasts with Coach Mack off and on over the years. I've also worked on a documentary that I got going, and it was still in the process, but I had to step away from it just because my workload got a little too much. I know that that's going to be finishing, at least from what I've been told, in the next little bit. So really looking forward to that. But during one of the podcasts one time, I want to say it was the day before Christmas Eve. We're over at Coach Mack's house in his living room. We're recording it. And, I go get Vicky and bring her in. Didn't tell her what I was going to ask her or anything like that. And I said, "Hey, Vicky," I was like, me and a bunch of the old guys, we've been talking about just the fact that we need to push for Coach Mack to get a statue. Obviously this was before the Ring of Honor. And she just kind of laughs. I was like, "No, Vicky, like, you know what he's done for this program, And she just starts laughing. She's like, "Oh God, Ronnie, a statue?" She's like, "Alex," she's like, "anytime I drive by that damn thing, I just start laughing."
Your wife is always the hardest person in your life to impress. That's for sure.
Oh man, and like literally, like she's sitting there saying that and just laughing hysterically, and Cal and I are just trying to hold Cal back. And man, that was one time in Mac's entire life that I've actually seen him speechless. And it just, I love it. I love the relationship that those two have, and it's Mac's name is going up in the Ring of Honor, but Vicky was so vital to it as well. I mean, that's the one thing that you will hear so many former players say. And I love that family. I'm so happy for them, and it's such a well-deserved honor. And I hope they continue to keep doing everything they can for Coach McBride. And I know that Mark Harlan is such a big proponent of him as well, that he's going to make sure to keep doing that because, he knows how important he is. And he got his start in football way back at Arizona when McBride was there, And so Mac, yeah, man, I could go on and on, man. But I'm so happy for Coach Mack.
He's the best. We'll see you up there on Saturday, Alex. Thanks for your time today.
Sounds great, bud. Appreciate you.
Alex Markham. Go find him at UNation. All right. We'll take a break from the Utah football discussion here. We have a family 4-pack to the Greek Festival that we're going to give away toward the end of the show in topical trivia. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, cheating in the NBA. In a meaningful way, the Clippers and Steve Ballmer are being investigated right now for violating all of the rules of the salary cap. James Peterson's beloved Clippers are a big problem. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Oh, you crafty Clippers. Steve Ballmer, you sly dog. You've been caught. You've been found out. Sean O'Connell Show continues here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. You've seen the report. You've heard the report. If you haven't, welcome. The LA Clippers and team owner Steve Ballmer have been accused of circumventing the NBA's salary cap by paying $28 million to Kawhi Leonard for a no-show job. So what was the name of the company? Aspiration? It is a bankrupt, effectively nonprofit for planting trees that was signing a bunch of celebrity endorsers to bring attention to their causes, et cetera, et cetera. And Kawhi Leonard was brought on as the biggest celebrity endorser, the biggest face of the project. $28 million to Kawhi Leonard to do nothing. Now, the deal came to him 9 months after Kawhi had signed a 4-year, $176 million contract to stay with the Clippers. That was the maximum allowed under NBA collective bargaining. They gave him a max contract. The idea, by the way, that some of these insane numbers that you are seeing thrown around in NBA contract circles are not enough and you're going to find money laundering ways to pay people more is banana sandwich. That makes me sick to my stomach, that $176 million fully guaranteed is not enough and that you have to do more for a player than that. But he never made an appearance. He never planted a tree. He never showed up in publication. It was just Kawhi Leonard is a celebrity endorser. Here's $28 million. And when the owner of the team and the owner of this now defunct company are the same, people are going to raise their eyebrows and they're going to take a look. And Pablo Torre was talking about it on his Pablo Torre podcast.
Which is incredible, by the way. If you have not listened to Pablo Torre, finds out. Big fan over here.
Dan Patrick had him on this morning, and they were talking about it. And Steve Ballmer categorically denied the claims.
Of course.
And said that's not true. And they had 3,000 pages of documentation supporting the idea that this was a no-show job. This is like, the only reason that most of us have ever heard of a no-show job is because we watch The Sopranos. Okay? And you learn about racketeering and money laundering schemes by the fictional mob movies that you watch. And what did they talk about in that show all the time? It is a no-show job that you have a deal with this union. Your guys get paid, and they don't have to do anything. And that's what Kawhi Leonard got from the Clippers, $28 million on top of everything else.
They told him all you have to do is not smile. And he's like, well, I'm really good at that,
he's
so
like,
I can do that.
You want me to laugh creepily every now and again with no smile on my face? Yes, Kawhi, that's what we want from you.
So that you fulfilled the terms of your contract. You do it all the time. Yeah. And this is not unprecedented, by the way. I mean, not at least we don't know for sure if something like this has happened, but there were rumors of Michael Jordan in his free agency being offered equity in companies, but the owners of the teams going after him owned, this kind of stuff. There's been rumors of this stuff before. This is the first substantiated thing. We're like, oh, this has happened. And of course, like Pablo, the fact that he had, what'd you say, 3,000 documents, that does not, if you're a listener of his podcast, or a viewer, it's video version on YouTube as well. That should not surprise you in the least. This is the guy who broke the union story about the NFL Players Union doing some nefarious practices, some conflicts of interest, and things like that. That's been in the news a lot lately. So, like, he goes deep when he breaks these kinds of stories. So when they say we have evidence, like they have more evidence than than just about any other reporter. So this should be the fact that he categorically denies it. It's like, well, listen,
That's par for the course.
Of course you do, but also like we don't just have a couple of people on record saying, we also have all this paper trail showing that you did this thing that is against NBA rules.
And they do have people saying there was an aspiration, which is now they filed for bankruptcy in March this year.
Yeah.
And a former employee said, yeah, that was a payment so that they could circumvent the salary cap rules. Now, what are the punishments for doing this? The collective bargaining agreement in 2023 included fines of up to $7.5 million, which is nothing for an NBA team. But here's where it's costly. Direct forfeiture of draft picks, voiding of player contracts, suspensions for up to 1 year for any team personnel found to have engaged in these violations. And it's not without precedent that a team has actually been punished. There's the rumor mills that you're talking about. And then it was the Minnesota Timberwolves.
That's right. I forgot about the Joe Smith thing.
Minnesota Timberwolves gave up 5 first-round draft picks.
Yeah.
Because they promised
about that.
Because they promised Joe Smith a multi-million-dollar extension as long as he signed the short-term thing. They were, again, illegal contract practices. At that time, the fine was $3.5 million. Their head coach was Kevin McHale. He was banned for a year. The owner was banned, which I don't know how you ban someone who still owns the team, for an entire season. So
is that like you're not allowed to go to games for a season? Is that what it is for owners?
I guess. And that was Joe Smith, and that was the Minnesota Timberwolves, which at the time was effectively an NBA backwater, right? You're talking about not the team in LA, but you're talking about a team in LA, and you're talking about a multiple-time All-Star, an MVP,
on the short list
champion,
a team that's on the short list of finals contenders this year in the Western Conference. Like this is a significant thing.
It's not a $28 million money laundering circumvention of salary cap rules is not a small thing.
No.
So the NBA, for all of its flaws, because every professional league has them, when you get caught, when you're not smart enough to cheat the right way, they make an example out of you. So I'm very curious to see how this plays as the investigation continues and what the league office does when inevitably it is revealed that indeed this is exactly what it looks like. And Steve Ballmer was just like, yeah, we'll find another way to pay you that extra $30 million that you're demanding. By the way, Kawhi, come on, dude. Maximum contract, and you still need more?
Yeah, that's – I mean, he and his agent clearly part of it is they're just trying to leverage as much every cent they can. It's not purely greed. It's also a game that you play, but it's like, come on.
Yeah, which is fine. Like I'm totally cool with people maxing out their leverage in the legal system. But here's where it bothers me. When you're the player, right, and you have your guaranteed – Kawhi's going to end up with, what, $600 million of basketball earnings when it's all said and done?
If he's not already there.
And some people are going to lose jobs over this who do not have that level of financial security. Like Steve Ballmer, you're fine. He's the top 10 richest man on planet Earth. He's going to be fine no matter how this thing plays out. And, you know, a certain level of executive, suspension, head coach, all that kind of stuff.
They're fine.
They're fine. There's got to be somebody who got caught up in all of this who makes like $125,000 a year, whose department gets punished or their job is removed or whatever else because Kawhi Leonard needs an extra $30 million. I
mean, think about these former employees of Aspire. Like, there's probably some fallout for people in that company who are probably not making 6-7 figures, right? Like
most definitely aren't, right?
Yeah,
that are just like, wait, we were laundering money.
Yeah, and
for a guy who's already worth hundreds of millions of dollars, we were making sure that he got paid more. He got this one lump sum payment of $28 million that could have funded my entire department's salaries for 5 years. Like, yeah, this is tough stuff.
Yeah, and listen, like these former employees, they might okay, the easy thing is obviously you don't put Aspire on your resume, but what if that's your only job experience, right? And like this has some fallout for those are some lower level employees that you're talking about, of not the Clippers but of Steve Ballmer, that could be some serious career and otherwise fallout for them. So
Also,
this is a serious thing.
I feel a need to chastise myself right now for never being on the positive end of some kind of scheme like this. Why am I not demanding that like the owner of our radio station pay me on the side through another company like insane amounts of money and just like quietly?
You mean allegedly not?
Because is this wire fraud? Does this qualify as like, this is a lot of money? Is this going to trigger some like federal statute?
Yeah.
Got to be careful with this stuff, man. Anyway, Clippers, it's football season, so that's all we're going to give you. But a wag of the finger, Steve Ballmer.
I have to say this, OC. I know you jokingly said my beloved Clippers. Because they're the other team in LA, because like anyone who's not a Lakers fan, especially if you're a fan of the Jazz or any other team in the Western Conference, you're like, you tend to have some affinity for the other team in that city, or at least I do. It's like being a Red Sox fan. I'm not a fan of the Mets, but like because they're not the Yankees and they're a rival of the Yankees,
you're not the Yankees.
I'm like, yeah, I'm okay if you do well, New York Mets. The Nets and the Knicks, if you're not a Knicks fan, you're like, yeah, I'm okay if the Nets do that. Let's go. Let's do this, Nets. That's kind of how the Clippers have been for me. So I do have a little bit of affinity for the Clippers. I always kind of have.
It bums me out because I thought Ballmer was like the cool owner. You know what I mean? Like he threw a bunch of money to build a new stadium and they did this creative thing. That wall thing looks neat.
I know the stadium's awesome.
I love his unhinged behavior from that old from that old Microsoft reveal video.
I timed that perfectly for the camera to come on me when I did that too.
I mean, just like he seems like the mascot
he introduced, which is basically the cartoon version of him. Like
the condor.
Yeah, that condor is like if he were a cartoon, if Steve Ballmer were a cartoon, he'd look like the condor. Yeah.
He's like a little bit terrifying. Yes.
Yeah, it bums me. It's a bummer from that perspective.
Also, sure. Kawhi, I wanted to root for you because you were like the Mountain West Conference. You were the San Diego State, like the quiet, humble kid. It turns out you're kind of like a sociopath. He's actually kind of like scary and doesn't seem like he cares about his teammates or basketball or anything. I don't know. Not a fan.
Boardman gets paid.
Boardman does get paid.
I haven't told you this. I've adopted that for the little guy with the binky. I say Bink Man gets paid.
Okay, that's
get that. Spit the binky out. Hey man, Bink Man gets paid.
So when your kid cries and you give him the binky, you say it to your wife or you say it to the child?
I say it to the child. I say hey, because he tries to spit it out a lot, and like, no man, Bink Man gets paid. Let's go.
That is unhinged. You are Steve Ballmer. Oh my gosh.
Also Kawhi Leonard, just a little bit of both there.
All right, we have a family 4-pack for Greek Festival tickets to give away next. I've got a trivia question for you. I gave you the answer earlier in the show, so come on. It's ESPN 700. It's 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show. All right, before we turn it over to Spence Checketts for the drive, he's coming at you from ARUP Blood Services today. They got a blood drive going on. Go donate. Get yourself a gift card and help save some lives up at the university hospitals.
May or may not be a nice prize for you, too, if you go out and give blood from a certain Utah football player. So check.
Are we allowed to just say what it is, or you can't?
I don't know if it. I did not get the information whether or not today's the day they give that away.
Here's what I'll say: that somebody who donates is going to have an opportunity to win a sick piece of Utah memorabilia autographed by somebody you probably want an autograph from. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, we'll just say that because I don't know.
And
if it's not today
it's
or
not
another
me.
event,
It's not me. I know that you want it to be. It's not me. It's somebody slightly cooler than me if you're a Utah football fan.
It's also not me, just to put that out there, just in case I know you were thinking maybe it might be me.
We're going to give away a prize, a family 4-pack of tickets to the Salt Lake City Greek Festival. Excuse me. If you could answer this trivia question, which we supplied the answer for earlier in the show today, 877-353-0700. Pro Football Focus does their stats in college football as well. And according to Pro Football Focus, there's a Ute leading the nation in quarterback pressures. His name is John Henry Daly. How many quarterback pressures did Pro Football Focus College credit him with against UCLA to lead the nation according to the site? Let's go, baby.
I thought you were going to go the other way. We did also talk about his famous relative, John Henry Daly.
We're not doing John Henry, the steel driving man. You know, he raced a steam shovel and won, but it cost him his life. That's not true, right? That's just a story that they tell you,
they
like
call
Paul
it
Bunyan?
Tall Tales. Yeah, it's in the same realm as Paul Bunyan, which they're all true, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for the drive with Spence Checketts. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. We got a big one for you tomorrow, so make sure you tune in from 11 to 2. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN Radio Network.